when a dark, heavy voice echoed inside Yuansi's head, constantly dragging him down. It spat out cruel insults, reminding him that he was always the unworthy child. Since childhood, the other kids relentlessly targeted him. They mocked him shamelessly, cooking up cruel jokes at every opportunity. Anything to embarrass him in public. Back then, the boy just stood there, head bowed low, silently swallowing the bitter insults and the burning pain. He was completely powerless, and he knew nothing he did would ever change that. But then, out of nowhere, one of those merciless bullies got hit. A heavy fist slammed right into his head, instantly silencing the laughter. Everyone froze in shock. His brother Ben stepped forward, practically radiating pure fury. He confronted the crowd, demanding to know what garbage they were spewing. They had no right to say those things, those absolute fools. They just blindly swallowed whatever cheap gossip and rumors they heard, never seeking the truth, mostly because they were just too dense. They just did not care enough to think. Meanwhile, little Yuansi looked on. He was completely overwhelmed by this sudden, fierce protection from his brother. The sheer wave of emotion was too much to hold back. Bowing his head, he let the tears fall, crying bitterly. Then Ben grabbed his hand. He leaned down, his voice steady as he made a solemn promise. He would never leave him behind, and he would always protect him. Still shaking from the ordeal, Yuansi managed a tiny, quiet smile. A single tear rolled down his cheek, carrying away all the built-up tension. Feeling the warm squeeze of his hand, Yuansi felt truly safe. He genuinely believed that with his brother around, nothing in this world could break him. But right then, in that very second, their grip suddenly slipped apart. It was so sudden, leaving them both completely stunned and confused. They stared at their open hands. Yuansi's face completely fell. Deep confusion and loneliness washed over his face, his eyes heavy with sorrow. He looked entirely helpless, standing on the edge of a vast, terrifying unknown. Then Ben turned and walked away without uttering a single word of explanation, leaving Yuansi standing completely alone, his mind spinning with sudden panic. Desperate, the boy lunged forward, trying to close the widening gap between them. He reached out with both hands, praying he could grab onto his brother. The sheer terror of being abandoned drove him forward, screaming out to the dark. He begged his brother to stop, pleading not to be left behind in the dark. But Ben just glanced back, coolly stating he was strong enough on his own. Suddenly, Yuansi snapped awake, drenched in cold sweat and gasping for air. He lay in the quiet room, his chest heaving as the nightmare lingered. His heart pounded as he tried to process it. Then high school arrived. Along with high school came a bizarre condition that slowly took over his life. His mind would violently force random, forgotten memories back into his consciousness. Even ancient, useless details. Meanwhile, his brain compiled everything. It gathered and analyzed every single useless fact without stopping. Complete static and mental noise took over, drowning out his actual thoughts. Consequently, his brain lost all normal control over his physical body. It reached an unbelievable level where his reflexes, movements, and even tiny reactions were entirely controlled by this hyperactive state, forcing his body to submit. The absolute worst part of this illness was that during flare-ups, Yuansi would experience an agonizingly sharp headache that tore through his head. No matter how many doctors looked at him, they could not find the actual cause of his condition, but thanks to special medicine his mother managed to import from abroad, things were mostly stable. Then comes a sudden knock at the door, followed by a delivery announcement. A package has arrived for him. He hesitates for a second, but curiosity wins. He decides to step outside to find out what was delivered, but deep down, he knows his imported medicine has barely been working at all lately. It has lost its edge, leaving his mind trapped in constant anxiety. Yuansi is starting to worry that his body has built up a massive tolerance to the drug, making the treatment completely useless. All his terrifying symptoms are slowly creeping back, keeping him on edge. As he steps out of his room, his eyes land on his aunt, who smiles warmly and suggests they head out to buy a few things. She wants him to help her pick out some much-needed daily essentials. Instead of arguing, Yuansi just gives a quiet nod of agreement. He grabs the package and starts checking it over with growing interest. A mix of nervous energy and curiosity washes over him. Strangely, there is absolutely no sender info written on the box. This immediately sets off alarm bells, so he inspects every seam. But then a voice cuts through the quiet from right behind him. A A cold shiver runs down his spine as he senses real trouble. Things are about to get incredibly dangerous for him in this house. His grandmother sternly warns him she will break his legs if he leaves. His heart starts pounding rapidly, suddenly terrified for his own safety. This old lady is definitely not the type to play around. Every single word she speaks carries a heavy, unmistakable threat. Meanwhile, his Aunt Jean tries to defend him to her mother. She points out that Yuansi is nearly 20 and needs to date. The only issue is his lack of nice clothes for dating. But the grandmother sees right through this and sternly orders her daughter to go on a blind date today herself instead of trying to escape. Jean complains loudly, reminding her that all her past dates were nightmares. Every single meeting has been an absolute waste of time. The women keep arguing. Yuansi quietly decides to open his package. He slowly breaks the seal, prying the box open. He peers inside, staring hard at whatever lies within. Is it a trap or maybe something even more dangerous? He pulls out a smooth, sleek card that feels surprisingly premium. The texture of the surface instantly grabs his attention. It feels special, different, almost like an invite to a secret club. An elite, high-class business card made strictly for the wealthy. It looked incredibly elegant and expensive, clearly crafted for elite high-society figures. Yuansi carefully slipped it into his pocket, making absolutely sure not to damage it. He leaned over the chest again. What other surprises lay waiting for him? With a racing heart, he reached down and pulled out a letter. His pulse quickened, his mind flooded with endless, frantic questions about the sender. Should he read it now, he had to discover the truth. One look at the handwriting confirmed it. This letter was definitely from Ben. It mentioned sudden, strange changes, hinting at a very special gift left behind. Ben had prepared something unique for him, sparking instant, nervous curiosity. But then reality hit. They had not spoken in quite some time. Why did this bizarre, high-end card suddenly show up like this? Feeling a sudden prickle of irritation, he grabbed his phone to get answers. Who sent this signal? He needed to know, so he dialed Ben. The line rang, his anxiety built, and his heartbeat started to hammer. His mind raced. What would his friend say to explain all this? But when the call finally connected, things took an incredibly dark turn. Instead of his friend, Ben's father answered with an incredibly heavy voice. This was highly unusual. Cold dread began settling deep in Yuansi's chest. Keeping his voice steady, Yuansi explained he was just calling to check on Ben. He wanted to chat, catch up, and share some important news. But instead of a warm greeting, Uncle Lei delivered devastating news. He was currently standing at his son's university because Ben had mysteriously vanished. This sudden disappearance made the strange card feel like an active threat. In fact, his best friend had already been missing for 2 whole days. The moment Uncle Lei and his aunt got the message, they rushed over. They arrived at the campus consumed by sheer panic and desperate hope. But finding any trace of him was going to be impossible. Ben had vanished under the most bizarre and inexplicable circumstances imaginable. The young man was last seen inside his secure dorm room, baffling investigators. When security checked the surveillance tapes, the mystery only grew deeper. Ben never walked out of that door, and only his roommate was inside. When his roommate turned away, Ben suddenly vanished into thin air. Yuansi listened in absolute silence, hanging on to every single chilling detail. He could barely believe his ears. This defied all physical reality. People do not just evaporate into nothingness, yet here they were. Yuansi quickly told Uncle Lei to stay calm and not to panic. He promised to contact his grandfather, a powerful official in public security, for help. He hoped his grandfather's connections could quickly locate his missing friend. Hanging up, Yuansi stood completely frozen as his mind spiraled. A million terrifying theories swirled around, making his chest tighten with absolute dread. Resting his chin on his hand, he began dissecting every single clue. He reviewed everything that had occurred from the moment he woke up today. He desperately searched for a rational link, but nothing made any sense. He reached into his pocket to pull out the elegant card once more. But his fingers met empty fabric. A cold wave of terror struck him. Felt incredibly off in a situation like this. At that very moment it made him even angrier. He felt like he had somehow slipped into some bizarre nightmare where reality was twisting into something completely unpredictable. The sheer amount of heavy information he had dealt with since sunrise was giving him a brutal, splitting headache, and Unable to handle the throbbing, he slumped over the wooden table for relief, trying. To find his focus, Yuansi quickly reached out for a bottle of medicine and shook out a dose, desperate to stop this blinding pain and kill the massive migraine that was splitting his skull and draining his strength. His vision started going blurry, making a bad situation even worse, and the pressure in his skull spiked, forcing him to squeeze his eyes shut and grip the desk to keep his balance. He just could not understand why. All of this was happening. Every single new detail only brought more grief. In shock, a chaotic flood of memories spun wildly inside his mind like a dark, raging whirlpool. Then his cousin Bean suddenly flashed before his eyes, and those old words about his brother being strong enough to handle anything echoed. His ears heavy with doubt, then dark blood began dripping from his nose, showing just how dangerously high his blood pressure had spiked. Every single drop served as a grim reminder of his failing health, shaking 2 pills into his palm. He dry swallowed them instantly, barely even tasting the bitter medicine, just wanting some relief. He prayed the chemicals would kick in and dull the ache. Before he collapsed, suddenly, a woman announced from outside that investigators from the Kenyang district were outside and needed a word. Her tense voice sent a sudden wave of anxiety straight through him. He was completely lost. He had no clue if these officers from his brother's precinct showing up now was just some random coincidence, or, get this, if something far worse was unfolding right on his doorstep. His elderly grandmother spoke up first, telling the officers that her boy had done absolutely nothing wrong, but they quickly assured her it was routine questioning. They wanted to ease the poor woman's panic. But she remained terrified. Shuffling over to him, she whispered that the men outside needed to talk to him. Her voice trembled with exhaustion and deep, heavy worry, yet there was also a sharp edge to her words. A subtle threat showing she still doubted his innocence, and her anger masked a deeper, painful fear about what he had gotten into. Sizing up the unexpected guests standing in the hallway, the young man recognized them as his cousin's police colleagues. His mind immediately raced through the dangerous reasons behind their sudden visit, opening the door wider. He introduced himself clearly, keeping his tone calm and completely steady, trying to keep the mood friendly and disarm them from the start. The lead detective wasted no time, asking if Yuansi knew Liban only. To find out they had basically grown up together, that surprised the officer, and highlighted just how deep their connection ran. Yuansi knew his cousin was the respected captain of the 2nd Unit in Kenyang. If these strangers were standing here, it meant trouble. They already knew, and they were coming for him. Sitting down, the officer spoke. He knew about the sudden disappearance. Ben had mailed a package to his brother. He sounded incredibly confident. Every single word was calculated, pretending he didn't know yet. The young man cried out in shock. His friend was gone. His voice shook with sudden panic. That was when the woman stepped in, telling Wang Tai not to terrify the student, urging him to relax. As if they were just having a friendly chat. In response, the hero explained that the box had arrived recently, with no sender listed on it. This only made him feel more anxious, wrapping everything in mystery. He added that the box was empty, which only deepened his confusion. Feeling incredibly suspicious, he wondered what this delivery was really all about. And honestly, since the black card was gone, technically he wasn't lying. That thought gave him some peace of mind. Then the officer pointed out that Yuansi was indeed the last person Li Ying contacted. Because of that, they needed to search his room, phone, and computer. Oni immediately agreed to let them search, having absolutely nothing to hide. His voice stayed perfectly calm, showing zero fear. Then the chief ordered his nearby team to get to work, and they moved into action. Carrying out his orders with practiced precision, the female officer stepped forward, thanked the student for cooperating, and then requested his phone, her tone remaining polite but incredibly firm. The hero hesitated, mentioning he had some private study materials on there, and immediately blushed, feeling quite embarrassed by it all. He felt slightly self-conscious, but the investigator assured him that she would only check files related to Lebanon, keeping her tone fully professional. That eased his mind. Still, the young man had to ask what exactly had happened to his brother. He knew that if he didn't ask questions, it would look suspicious, so he tried to play dumb. The investigator then explained that the student had simply been lying in his dorm room and suddenly vanished. Nobody had been able to reach him for 24 hours, forcing them to contact the police. The young Man already knew all of this, realizing the investigation had made no progress. Either they were stuck, or they were keeping the real details to themselves. Wearing a dark, serious expression, the investigator strictly ordered him to call them immediately the very second he found out or saw anything, warning him not to hide anything and stressing the gravity of the situation. Then get this, he delivered a chilling warning, claiming the next target would be Yuansi himself. Those words fell incredibly cold and heavy. Leaving behind a tense, dangerous silence, the hero couldn't wrap his head around the threat, but he simply thanked the man for the warning. Trying to hide his inner panic and show no fear, he sat waiting for this nightmare to end and for the strangers to finally leave. Feeling a wave of relief, he watched as the woman returned his phone, announcing that their search was done in a surprisingly calm, reassuring voice. She looked at him with a warm, open smile, which somehow it starts feeling a bit lighter and more relaxed in the room. But then the student realizes that the woman saw something on his phone she shouldn't have. Now he's completely on edge, stressing over what his next move should be. The investigator hands over his business card, telling the kid to call him. If any new leads pop up, they can keep in touch. In return, the student asks for updates on his missing brother. And while they agree, there's a clear flash of hesitation in their eyes. Even his grandmother is starting to panic, sensing that something is terribly wrong. She insists they call the missing boy's mother, her voice filled with anxiety. Trying to calm her down, the grandson asks her to do him a favor. Just tell grandfather everything about Ben's disappearance the second he gets back. He claims he's got a splitting headache and needs to lie down for a bit. But outside, the investigator's car is still parked, keeping everyone on high alert. That constant threat is lingering right there. Meanwhile, inside the car, the supervisor asks Gwen if she dug up anything useful on the student's phone. His voice is dead calm, but he's listening for every little detail. She instantly smiles, reporting that there's plenty of interesting data on it. The boss locks eyes with her, his curiosity instantly spiked by her words. Spit it out, he commands with a heavy, stern tone that leaves no room for arguments. Gwen explains that the kid has several hidden folders he was clearly trying to bury, which immediately raises a massive red flag. His device is packed with standard study materials, but there's a catch. He also has deep, unrestricted access to some very specific social networks. This alone makes his phone a goldmine of secret information. Besides that, his online footprint is mostly just gaming groups. The kid is clearly a loner with no real social life outside of his console. The boss, however, isn't impressed by this basic psychiatric profiling. He scowls, annoyed she actually thinks this is important. He snaps at her to stop digging through the kid's private life. But Gwen doesn't see the issue at all. She playfully rolls her eyes, calling her boss a total stick in the mud. Then she drops a real bomb. The letter sent by Ben was hidden behind a flower pot, meaning the package definitely wasn't empty. There was absolutely something highly valuable left inside of it. It had to be a character card, but the class remains a total mystery. Swirling a glass of red wine, the supervisor makes a cold decision. They need to pay another visit tomorrow, unless the target vanishes overnight. His chilly tone suggests he won't let this kid slip away. Outside, the sun begins to dip, painting the horizon in deep purple. The beautiful twilight colors completely mask the tension building below. Back in his bedroom, our protagonist sits silently in front of his monitor. Staring at the screen, a dark realization finally hits him. Ben's sudden disappearance was no accident. It was meticulously planned from the start. Their ultimate goal has always been to get their hands on that black card. And the Security Bureau isn't the only threat tracking his every move. Meanwhile, a third party was actively hunting for Ben's brother, desperately trying to gain an edge. Realizing the danger, his friend decided against contacting the Bureau. Trust was completely gone. Yuansi found himself caught in the exact same trap, utterly unable to trust anyone around him. His safest move was telling his cousin everything, the only person he actually trusted. He needed to explain everything that had actually occurred, but doing so was practically impossible. His cousin was the sole ally left, but the problem, he was completely unreachable right now. And even if they could connect, how do you logically explain a physical map vanishing into thin air? He literally had no way to explain it, dissolving right out of his own pocket. Suddenly, Jin burst straight into his room, absolutely furious at his sudden and complete silence. She demanded to know why her nephew was ignoring all her calls and texts. His silent treatment only left her deeply anxious, and he still would not reply. Realizing he was highly unlikely to answer only pushed her closer to the absolute limit. Her irritation flared into hot anger, desperately wanting to know the reason for his silence. But the moment Yuansi stood up from his desk, the entire world suddenly went completely dark. Everything blurred into a dizzying spin, leaving him utterly lost in a cold, deep void. Gripping his head, Yuansi gasped as a blinding headache struck him down. His vision swam, unable to comprehend the pain. The agony was rising fast, rendering his thoughts useless as his mind faded. Even the heavy medicine he took earlier did absolutely nothing to stop this violent, crushing pressure. He squeezed his temples in sheer despair, his thoughts shattered by the blinding torment. There was no room for logic now, only a piercing sensation that dominated his entire nervous system. Outside, his grandmother suddenly stepped in, pulling her nagging daughter away from the door. She watched her closely, immediately asking for every single detail about how her blind date went. Jin grumbled that the date actually went reasonably well. The guy had prime real estate, but his extreme wealth somehow just made her feel deeply annoyed. It left her with totally mixed feelings. Meanwhile, back inside, Yuanzi crawled toward the mirror. He stood shivering in front of the glass, staring intently at his own pale, exhausted reflection. He tried to understand what was happening. Why did he look so completely drained? But his eyes went wide with shock as he noticed a bizarre change on his skin. Panic set in, and honestly, you would be absolutely terrified in this exact moment too. A dark mark was actively forming right in the middle of his forehead. It immediately captured his gaze, making his racing pulse drum heavily against his ribs. Right beneath the mark, a tiny ribbon displayed 90% in clear, glowing letters. The mysterious progress bar filled him with an intense, gut-wrenching sense of absolute, terrifying foreboding. Then the truth clicked. This was the legendary black moon from the map. The loading bar was steadily creeping upward, ratcheting up his silent panic with every single passing tick. Yuanzi realized the map had actually fused straight into his very own physical body. He remembered his brother warning him that this exact discovery would completely change his entire destiny. Someone out there was actively hunting for it, willing to kill for the prize. Ben must have desperately transferred the power to him right before his sudden, unexplained disappearance. He left behind only terrifying questions and a ticking clock. Suddenly, the loading scale surged, hitting 100% in the blink of an eye. The sudden shock made his heart hammer violently inside his chest. The character card was fully reloaded now, completely transforming his core reality in an instant. A surge of wild power flooded his veins, his path had officially changed. Opening up wild new possibilities, suddenly a strange glowing window materializes in front of him. It displays his character details with extreme precision, letting him measure his true hidden power. But first, a prompt. The system demands that he type his name so it can register him as the primary owner. Only then will his real stats display. The screen is incredibly basic with no clickable options. For a moment, Yuanzi considers entering a fake name, but he quickly reconsiders. The system is too smart when he types his name. It warns him that real names are strictly banned, bringing on a sudden wave of dread. What if he breaks a critical rule? The boy stands silent in the middle of his room, staring blankly into space. He needs an original, safe yet cool nickname. To hide his identity, he locks one in and enters it. Now he waits in breathless silence for the system's next move, watching as fresh menu selections slowly unlock on the interface. Everything set up goes perfectly. The system announces that the entire spirit world will open in 10 seconds, wishing Yan Shitanzu the best of luck. The unknown looms. Our hero is left completely in the dark, clueless in a totally unfamiliar and mysterious new realm. A rush of fear, surprise, and sheer curiosity hits all at once. The timer ticks down. The gateway to the spirits is opening. Every beat of his heart is pure, agonizing tension. Then, load complete. He is instantly pulled deep into the tunnel of the night god, Yulan, where suffocating dark and strange cold swallow him whole. The anxiety is unreal, but so is the hype. Main quest. Survive for 3 hours inside this deadly tunnel under an intense S-rank difficulty level. Brutal trials and mortal danger await. His other task is simple: explore. However, bringing any items from the ordinary world is strictly forbidden. making this dark journey incredibly dangerous and completely unpredictable. Yuanzi looks closely at his hands, trying to comprehend how fast everything has happened, while his chaotic mind struggles to process this strange environment. He is in a different world. This dimension is unlike anything he knows, where normal physics simply do not apply, and every single thing feels alien. A new text box pops up to explain that this Yulan Tunnel is one of the 10 great legends from the Zhongzhen War, revealing a deeper meaning and history of this strange world directly to Yuanzi. Suddenly, another flashing system alert warns him that his dangerous journey and introduction to this spirit world is about to begin right now. This eerie Yulan tunnel was constructed last century during a chaotic nighttime excavation. An entire crew of workers vanished inside without a trace, never to be seen again. Years later, searchers found one sole survivor. He was alive but completely broken, muttering one single sentence, day after day, warning everyone of the unspeakable horror waiting inside. Never enter the temple, the warning kept repeating in his head. Yuanzi listened intently, keeping a completely focused look on his face. He slowly analyzed the words, piecing together every single detail and terrifying outcome. Weighing the risks, he tried to plan his next move. He concentrated deeply on the strange spot where the screen had appeared. Understanding what lay in front of him was now crucial. And then the realization hit. This was the exact tunnel from those old urban legends. Cursed and forbidden, locals whispered about it for ages. A terrifying spot. Yuanzi tried to calm down. He desperately told himself there was no way this was the infamous Yulan Tunnel. Shanghai legends, the creepy rumors about this place were absolutely terrifying. He recalled passing by this very same area just a couple of days ago. While heading back to his hometown to honor his late father, back then, things looked normal. It was not nearly as ruined and decayed as it appeared today. Now it felt like time itself had twisted the entire atmosphere into something sinister. Yuanzi tried to connect the dots, a dark realization washing over him. He had been pulled into this living nightmare specifically to complete some bizarre quest. A strange force was pulling the strings, and that voice had laid out two distinct missions. If survival was his first goal, it meant danger, real, lethal danger. And exploring the spiritual world clearly meant heading straight into that creepy tunnel. There was no other option. Reaching this grim conclusion, the player. He fully understood that this environment was trying to kill him. There was absolutely no easy escape from this deadly, dark trap. But high risks usually meant high rewards if there was a mission. A massive reward had to be waiting at the finish line. According to his system panel, his class was Night Wanderer, but his level was completely blank. Starting from scratch, Yuanzi realized Brother Ben was totally right. This special card was a genuine ticket to changing his entire life forever. But let me tell you, surviving this quest was going to be brutal. Playing on deadly difficulty in a spiritual realm was definitely not a game. Every single corner screamed of hidden traps and instant death. One wrong step would cost him his life. Suddenly, the lights. Lining the tunnel, the lights went completely black, plunging Yuanzi into darkness. Every tiny sound and creeping shadow felt like a threat. Whirling around, he caught sight of a human silhouette standing there. Dread washed over him because he never expected anyone else down here. His heart hammered wildly. As the figure stepped closer, things got worse. Yuanzi gasped, his face tightening as he tried to identify the intruder. Who on earth was standing before him, and what did they want? The stranger wore shredded rags, and his limbs looked incredibly thin. They resembled skeletal bones, making him look like a walking corpse. He looked totally unreal. Then it clicked. These were the exact tunnel workers mentioned on his system screen. Horrifying, all the local rumors were absolutely true. And looking at their faces, the legends became real. They looked completely lifeless, as if made from pure shadows and darkness. Just staring at their distorted features sent a cold shiver down his spine. The horde marched forward like zombies, their eyes glowing a menacing red. An immediate terrifying threat for Yuanzi, and right at that moment, he finally realized he was dealing with decomposing, rotting corpses. The thick, putrid stench of death filled the air, crushing his hope. No time to waste, Yuanzi bolted away immediately. He ran as fast as possible, his heart hammering wildly against his ribs. His legs moved on pure instinct, running faster than his mind could process. Those rotting, undead hands reached out, desperately clawing to grab hold of him. Terror surged through him, forcing him to push his body past its limits. The threat felt physically heavy, still they moved. Like emotionless, programmed machines, stepping forward in perfect, chilling unison. This robotic focus made them even more terrifying and completely unpredictable. Then Yuansi noticed something strange. They were not actually chasing him. That small realization helped him calm his breathing, though his pulse still raced. The dread was still there, but he forced himself to evaluate the situation. He needed to find a safe way out of this nightmare. But when he scanned the path ahead, his chest tightened all over again. An endless wave of those creepy figures stood blocked on the other side. The sheer scale of them made escape feel totally impossible. It looked like they were specifically crowding around the newly arrived hero. Every single one of them focused their terrifying, silent gaze on Yuansi. No sound came from them, they just slowly raised their decaying hands. They shuffled forward, acting like puppets controlled by some invisible master. Mindless, merciless, Yuansi felt himself being driven into a tight corner. He believed he was completely cornered now, with absolutely no way to slip past. Surrounded on every side, he was trapped in a seemingly hopeless dead end. But wait, he actually got it all wrong. They did not attack. Instead, the slow, creepy movements of these workers had a different purpose. They were pointing toward a specific path, helping him find a way through. Following their gestures, he spotted a tiny house nestled in the dark distance. Its faint outline was barely visible through the thick nighttime shadows. Mystery hung heavy in the air, yet he ran with everything. Sprinting toward the structure while his lungs burned and his chest throbbed. His legs could barely keep pace with his racing, frantic thoughts, just a few. Meters later, he burst out of the tunnel into a wide, open clearing. Faint morning sunlight illuminated the area, bringing fresh air and a vast open space. Yet he was surrounded only by massive mountains, shadows, and silence. A heavy wave of isolation hit him, making his anxious heart pound harder. Luckily, those terrifying undead creatures had decided to stay far behind. But this made no sense, because the system panel explicitly warned him. It stated clearly that this task was lethal, and mistakes meant instant death. Yuansi still could not understand why those dead workers had spared him. Why on earth did they guide him towards safety, leaving him completely baffled? It was suspiciously quiet, and his mind raced with endless questions. He couldn't shake what just happened, still the smart move was clear. He needed to put some serious distance between himself and those freaky creatures. No way was he sticking around for whatever nasty surprise came next. So he kept moving along the dark forest path, guided only by the moonlight. The pale light filtered through the thick canopy, casting long, eerie shadows. But it was far too quiet. He knew a forest like this shouldn't be silent. There should have been insects buzzing, but this total lack of noise was deafening. The heavy silence made him uneasy, but nothing jumped out at him. Just a strange silhouette of a building looming ahead, his only real destination. It looked like his only sanctuary in this endless, pitch-black silence. Wheezy cautiously stepped onto the grounds, tension building with every single step. Up close, the towering shadow of the structure felt incredibly hostile and ominous. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, scouting out the unfamiliar area. He needed to scan every dark corner before making any sudden moves. He couldn't afford any stupid mistakes. Thick cobwebs clung to everything, proof that nobody had lived here in ages. Every single dusty strand just screamed total isolation and decay. He brushed against random clutter on the ground, completely ruined by time. They were so rusted and worn down that he couldn't even identify them. Still, he pushed forward, realizing this was no ordinary house. It was actually a massive temple, radiating an ancient, heavy power. The sheer weight of the mysterious atmosphere made his chest tighten. He stared in disbelief, struggling to accept what he was looking at. The whole scene felt completely surreal, blending pure wonder with creeping dread. It was absolutely terrifying, yet somehow beautiful. Then a blue screen popped up. A system notification flared, warning him to prepare for some kind of meeting. Just an ominous warning, pure silence. Wheezy instantly recalled the voice, telling him to stay away from the temple. But turning back wasn't an option. The tunnel behind him was completely gone. All he had left was this massive, ancient structure, practically begging him to enter. A dark thought crossed his mind. What if those creepy monsters did this on purpose? Maybe they had herded him here to trap him in a corner. He now faced a terrifying, invisible threat. Suddenly, two distinct quests loaded. When you combine them, the goal is simple: survive 3 hours inside. He would have to dodge deadly traps and unpredictable threats at every turn. Wheezy knew that stepping inside meant an incredibly high risk of dying. But staying out here in the open didn't guarantee his survival either. He was stuck choosing between a guaranteed death trap and absolute uncertainty. The initial system warning told him never to enter this place, which made him hesitate. He wavered between playing it safe and the inevitable pull of the temple. But as his boot touched the stone steps, a sudden shift occurred. He realized his real mission was to explore this place and uncover its secrets. The fear was paralyzing, but the mystery was just too big to ignore. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside to finally face the truth. Secrets wanting to know what lay waiting inside despite risking his own life. Climbing up the dusty steps, the young boy spotted a faint light glowing. That was strange. The temple looked completely abandoned and covered in ruin. Then heavy footsteps echoed right behind him. His chest instantly tightened. Pure panic gripped every single nerve as cold dread washed over him. He spun around, but the thick grass stood completely still, nothing. The crushing silence only made him feel more cornered in this dark place. Yuansi stayed hyper-focused, his ears straining to catch even the softest sound. Every tiny rustle felt like a matter of life and death now. He searched the shadows again, but his eyes found absolutely nothing. The void around him only grew heavier with the threat of unseen danger. He knew how these horror stories went. Silence meant a ghost. Any second now, something terrifying was going to jump out at him. His pulse hammered with the absolute certainty of an incoming supernatural encounter. The heavy footsteps were getting louder now, closing in fast. It almost felt like an unseen force was hurting him inside. Like every single step forward had been planned out by a monster. Terrified, he bolted, convinced his late brother Ben was back as a ghost. He figured Ben wanted revenge, and that thought sent him flying forward. His lungs burned as he pushed his legs past their limit. Those invisible footsteps kept chasing him, getting closer and closer. Still, nobody was there, just a terrifying, unseen stalker right behind him. Yuansi screamed out in pure terror, the sound echoing through the dark. He was completely helpless against this faceless, invisible threat in the woods. He ran blindly, driven by nothing but survival instinct and raw panic. His heart thudded in his ears as his trembling legs carried him forward. He slammed the heavy temple doors open, stumbling into the ancient room. The freezing, pitch-black air hit him instantly, sending shivers down his spine. Standing in the quiet, he tried to catch his breath and think. He forced himself to calm down, desperate to regain his composure. But as Yuansi looked back, he noticed the front door was wide open. That was a terrible sign. Leaving it open felt like an invitation. He slid down against the wooden frame, keeping his eyes glued outside. Every nerve was still on edge as he tried to analyze the quiet. Was he actually being hunted, or was his mind just playing tricks? Then the ghostly footsteps faded away, leaving behind an eerie silence. He let out a shaky sigh, though his gut warned him not to relax. The heavy dread remained, keeping him on high alert for any noise. For just a split second, the young man felt safe. But we all know that quiet moments in these places never last. He looked around. Glowing candles lined the walls, throwing long shadows everywhere. The dim, flickering flames gave the sanctuary a deeply unsettling feeling. Suddenly, a blood-red light flooded the entire main hall. Yuansi spun around, feeling a cold chill creep up his spine. A massive, terrifying shadow loomed right over him, silent and ready to strike. His heart pounds. On either side stand two beautiful stone ladies, sculpted with breathtaking, grand detail, evoking both admiration and fear. He feels it deeply, a heavy, mystical, crushing presence. It feels as if those cold stone eyes are tracking his every single move. Judging his steps, right in the center of this mysterious temple, stands a woman's statue. She almost looks alive, her eyes staring with a sharp intelligence and mysterious, radiating aura. The composition is unsettling, yet utterly, completely mesmerizing. Fear and awe fight for control inside his racing mind. From Yuanzi's spot, the giant statue looks incredibly massive, looming over him with a crushing, inescapable, and mystical power. The young man stays calm. Quietly, he surveys the area, studying every corner, noticing the subtle shifts in light and shadow. The flickering glow creates a strange, tense atmosphere. He notices that the statue's hands are cupped, clearly meant to hold something. but centuries of decay have completely erased whatever was once placed there. He keeps searching, desperately hoping to find a hidden clue, tracing every single crack and ancient carving on the floor. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto a stone tablet with old symbols inscribed. Right in front of him, this could explain the temple's dark history, revealing its dark, ancient purpose and secrets. These markings date back to the early Ming dynasty, making them over 500 years old, a major clue to what happened here. Reading the words sends a sudden chill down Yuanzi's spine. His instincts scream that a dangerous trap is already closing in. Something else is wrong too. Who changed the candles in the main hall? No one else should be here, yet the flames burn bright, casting a warm, constant glow across the stone chamber. And here is the twist. A sudden realization flashes in his eyes. His mind races, connecting the dots of everything he has seen. He pieces together the timeline, trying to make sense of this madness, recalling every person he crossed paths with on his way in, analyzing their brief interactions to find a hidden, missing link. Those candles are fresh. Someone stood in this exact spot just minutes ago, their flickering glow creating a heavy sense of anticipation. Could it have been one of the crew workers? Perhaps a crew member wandered down here, accidentally sparking all of these rumors, which eventually turned into the creepy urban legends that the locals whisper about. In any case, the young man understands he is in deep trouble. Survival now depends entirely on finding any hidden clue to get out alive. He refuses to let this creepy, silent temple become his final grave. His determination and resolve only harden with every tense second that ticks by. He will reach the end and drag every secret into the light. Crouching down low on the cold, dusty temple floor, Yuanzi begins to closely examine the old skeleton lying before him. He spent a long time studying every bone and tiny scrap of clothing. He wanted to understand his history. How exactly did he die? The chest and ribs were broken. There was a crack on his shoulder. However, the damage was minor, suggesting these injuries were old rather than fatal. He looked closer. He suspected something was hidden in the uniform pocket. He carefully began to feel around the fabric, searching for a clue. He hoped to find a hidden object or note containing valuable information. This was a tragedy from long ago, traces of time left behind. Now every tiny detail held the potential to reveal what truly happened. It pointed back to that ancient incident. Another monk had disappeared. This victim was actually the third disciple to vanish from the temple. It all started when a powerful demon began visiting Mount Sando nightly. The beast hunted people, terrorizing everyone. Soon, the master ordered action. He told the disciples to hide the danger from visiting pilgrims. He foolishly believed his own paper talismans were enough to ward off evil. Yet a dark feeling lingered. More disciples kept vanishing without a trace. The situation was desperate. He needed to find his eldest disciple immediately. Together, they had to figure out a way to keep everyone safe. But the worst had already happened. The eldest disciple was gone too. Terrified, the remaining disciples begged the master to do something before they died. Gripped by absolute terror and helplessness against this unknown threat, he relented. He ordered a disciple to meet him after sunset to reveal a secret. It was a truth concerning 1,000 years of their temple's history. These ancient mysteries would decide the ultimate fate of everyone on the mountain. But as Yuanzi read, the written account suddenly cut off, unfinished. It left him with a deep, unsettling mystery he had to know. The dead worker had stashed the old temple notes right in his pocket. This was a massive clue, since the real cause behind the ruin remained unknown. The truth about Mount Sando was still buried, and trust me, he had to find it. Yuanzi knew he had to keep moving forward, even if it meant heading straight into danger. He realized the deadly threat level would only rise the deeper he went. He had to stay on high alert in this incredibly eerie place. Still, local legends whispered that a single worker had somehow managed to escape. He had survived. If Yuanzi could trace that survivor's steps, he might find a safe way out. He had to avoid the lurking horrors. Right now, silence was absolute. It was so quiet that cold goosebumps broke out across his body. Even the sound of his own breathing felt terrifyingly loud. He knew a threat was waiting for him right outside those doors. Retreating was out of the question, meaning he had to find another path forward. He crept through the dark, straining his ears for any noise. Standing still was death. He had to find a breakthrough fast. Any step could reveal a vital clue or spring a deadly trap. If he hesitated, his chances of making it out alive would drop to zero. Taking a deep breath, Yuansi stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He wanted to uncover temple secrets left buried for centuries. Soon he reached a new area, scanning his surroundings. He checked everything, every single detail and tiny crack. He needed to piece together the dark history of this place. Heavy darkness pressed in from all sides, with only the faint temple glow guiding his way. The weak light showed narrow paths and twisted shadows ahead. Rocks and trees loomed like silent monsters in the cold night. Another ruined structure slowly appeared right before the young man. The exterior was trashed, and the inside was pitch black. Cracked walls and a caved-in roof leaked a heavy scent of decay. He stepped into a courtyard, surrounded by rotting, abandoned structures. Moss clung to the brickwork, and hollow windows stared back. Honestly, this creepy setup has bad news written all over it. Frowning, Yuansi strained his ears for any sign of movement. One wrong step here meant death. He had to stay alert. Pressing forward, he kept his eyes glued to the darkness. Every single corner could hold a clue or a deadly trap. Yuansi realized the entire trail behind him was a total mess. Broken construction gear, old tools, and wood lay scattered everywhere. And mixed in with the rubble were human bones, making his skin crawl. Navigating this graveyard kept him on edge, his muscles locking tight. Strangely, nearly all the victims had shattered forearm bones. Yet their shoulder areas remained completely intact, without a single mark. Talk about a major red flag right there. Out of nowhere, a desperate cry for help echoed through the ruins. The pure terror in that voice made his chest tighten. Was this actually a real survivor, or just a deadly trap? The frantic screams bounced off the stone walls, getting closer. Whoever was making that noise had to be extremely close. Any sane person would have run away instantly, but not him. He had to find out what was going on, no matter how dangerous it might be. As he pushed forward, thoughts of his brother Ben filled his head. Ben's voice and old advice echoed in his mind, giving him strength. It was enough to help him push past the dread. He mentally threatened to send the hidden files to Uncle Leia. That old man needed to see exactly what his precious son was up to. All the dirty secrets were finally coming to light. The night grew heavier. Only the cold twinkle of faint stars managed to cut the gloom. They offered just enough light for him to navigate the ruins. Thick layers of cobwebs draped over the decaying stone walls. The place felt totally abandoned, cold, neglected, and empty. Then Yuansi spotted a skeleton that looked surprisingly well preserved. Unlike the others, it seemed like time had barely touched it. This bizarre find instantly set off major alarm bells. Only its shoulder blades were shattered, matching the corpse in the main hall. He doubted it was a coincidence, but uncertainty remained. He noticed something completely unknown hidden deep inside the pocket. It was completely hidden, instantly sparking intense curiosity. He felt a creeping sense of danger, but carefully pulled it out. To his surprise, he pulled out an old mirror, a strange talisman, and a book. The book was tattered and filled with weird, mysterious symbols. They looked heavily worn, having clearly survived through several generations already. An antique relic, suddenly a window flashed before his eyes. The screen notified him that a rare item had been successfully discovered. An artifact from the spirit world was now officially added to his inventory. This was a single-use item, placing it directly on a yin creature's forehead. Would banish the dark entity from this world forever, leaving nothing behind. Yuansi immediately realized this talisman was extremely valuable for his survival. It could easily serve as his trump card against any upcoming danger. Next, his attention shifted to the other item, which seemed equally mysterious. It promised to unlock some deep secrets. He carefully opened the old book. Inside was an ancient tale, one that required reading between the lines. Slowly he uncovered the hidden narrative. It spoke of a master's journey. 2 years had passed since the master arrived on Mount Sando to train. He had faced many trials while living among the quiet mountain hermits. His senior brother had instructed him to officially take over a crucial duty. Once the master purified the souls, his official acceptance was absolutely mandatory. Cultivation required infusing souls with moonlight, a vital and ancient technique. But dark times arrived when Prince Yan appeared, and black smoke choked the sky. The master fought desperately to purify souls before everything fell into ruin. He did everything to stop the deadly yin curse from taking the villagers. The young man realized this was a personal diary. The paper felt familiar. It matched the scrap from the main hall, though he doubted its historical truth. These tales of the night priest seemed too wild to be real history. Then a passage described a door suddenly swinging open before the master. His missing senior brother stood there, looking exactly like a living corpse. His chest was completely covered in blood, and his heart was ripped out. And of course, the most crucial pages were torn out, leaving him hanging. This sudden end left him with an uneasy sense of mystery and dread. He knew he couldn't stay here. A creepy crawling feeling ran down his back. A sudden wave of panic hit him, a warning of some invisible threat. But then he remembered the final item still clutched in his hand, the mirror. This simple object could easily hold the key to surviving this nightmare. He decided to examine it closely. The glass was perfectly intact and clean. Maybe it would reflect whatever was hiding in the shadows around him. Shock and pure terror, his eyes widened at what the mirror revealed. His heart hammered violently. Right there behind him in the cold reflection was a faceless creature staring back at him with cold, piercing eyes. Sheer terror gripped his soul, causing the blood in his veins to freeze. In absolute panic, the young man screamed at the top of his lungs. He screamed from the depths of his lungs, his voice echoing through the empty room, bouncing off the walls. In a panic, he began praying to banish the heavy, evil force that filled the room with a suffocating tension and spiritual energy. He begged Brother Ben for mercy, completely desperate because, until now, he truly believed he was the source of this nightmare. Staring into the mirror once more, Yuansi prayed with everything he had for his exorcism talisman to work and banish the vengeful ghost, hoping its spiritual power would purge the dark entity from the room. But it was completely useless. The creature did not budge. It just stood there, a heavy shadow looming over Yuansi. And driving him to absolute despair, slumped on the floor, he began to sob, crushed by guilt for making the choice to abandon the temple. Everything had spiraled out of control. It was completely uncontrollable. He felt like those dead, decaying workers were dragging him down into their dark, eerie abyss, a world of pure nightmare where every single step felt deadly. Then he heard those familiar footsteps again. More, and he knew it was the same relentless beast hunting him. His chest tightened as terror gripped him completely, yet Yuanzi was ready to fight these spirits, determined to protect his own life at all costs. Shaking off his panic, the young man glanced out the window and spotted an eerie red glow flickering in the courtyard. Flickering with danger, what exactly was waiting out there? Against the pitch-black night, the crimson light burned bright like an ominous painting, pointing him directly toward a disturbing trap. Squinting into the dark, he realized it was a pair of empty red shoes, shining with a bizarre, unnatural light that sent shivers down his spine. He slapped both hands over his mouth to choke back a scream, his heart hammering against his ribs as raw panic spiked his nerves. He felt like he was completely losing his mind. Why on earth would modern red shoes be sitting inside an ancient Ming Dynasty temple? It looked incredibly wrong. The sheer horror was building. Yuanzi kept watching from the windowsill, keeping his eyes locked onto the bizarre footwear, desperately trying to figure out if it was dangerous. 1,000 questions raced through his brain as he struggled to connect the dots and understand what these horrifying events meant for his survival. His face was pale, completely drained of life and hope as the encroaching shadows and weird events pushed him closer to the edge. Staring down at the few items left in his trembling hands, he silently questioned what his next move should be and how to survive. Doomed by a supernatural force he could not fight, then his shoulder began to throb with blinding pain, feeling like it would burst open. The pressure was agonizing. It was simply too much to bear. He bolted backward at breakneck speed, his heart pounding like a drum as he desperately tried to outrun the horror closing in on him. And with every step, the invisible weight on his shoulder grew heavier. Every passing minute squeezes his body with invisible chains of fear, forcing him to take every single step with incredible effort. He had never felt so heavy. Moving is nearly impossible. Every step feels like a brutal struggle against an invisible force dragging him down, demanding massive energy to resist. Completely spent, he finally collapses onto the floor, desperately controlling his breathing to regain his strength after that terrifying Narrow escape, feeling his racing heart slowly return to its normal rhythm, as it turns out the main hall is actually the safest zone to rest and recover, offering a rare moment of peace amid the chaos swirling around him. After sitting in silence for a bit, Yuansi notices the pain. His injured shoulder is starting to fade, letting him catch his breath and gather his strength to carefully plan his next moves in this place. At first, he barely managed to escape those weird cursed boots, and then struggled to reach the main hall with a literal ghost clinging to his shoulder, making every step feel like an unbearable mountain of fear crushing down on his body. But if they attack him together, honestly, he knows he does not stand a chance against their insane speed, which is way beyond his capabilities. All that is left is pure despair and a brutal, inevitable struggle. He must prepare himself mentally before stepping back outside, where even more terrifying creatures might be waiting. But before the young man can even catch his breath, a bright system notification window pops up to announce some incredibly massive news. He has cleared the main quest, bringing an instant wave of relief. It catches him completely off guard because time flew by so fast. While he was locked in that intense, non-stop battle for survival, along with some valuable quest experience, he is rewarded with a special talisman and, best of all, 36 hours of precious resting time before the next spirit world opens up with brand new trials. In an instant, Yuansi's body turns weightless, glowing with a soft blue light that envelopes his entire aura, filling every single cell with immense power. Suddenly, a wave of magic teleports him away from that dangerous place. He finds himself standing right back inside his own familiar room, surrounded by his personal belongings, triggering a bizarre sense of déjà vu. The young man is stunned because he never expected this sudden return, leaving his mind racing to make sense of the sudden transition. Feeling too exhausted to function, he collapses straight onto his bed, noticing how clean the familiar air feels compared to that spirit world. But just as he starts to relax, he sits straight up, remembering he absolutely has to inspect his new reward talisman today. That single thought wipes away all his fatigue, locking his focus on this goal. The moment he thinks about it, his glowing system inventory panel pops open in front of him, clearly displaying every single one of his items. It feels incredible to have this direct control over all his gear. The layout is incredibly intuitive, meaning he does not even need to learn how to navigate it to retrieve whatever he needs instantly. It materialized in his hands, instantly reacting to his thoughts and intentions. No extra effort required, since his level is still 0, the player has lacking access to any powerful class abilities, forcing him to rely solely on basic skills. That means using his wits to survive. Grabbing his phone, Yuansi starts thinking. He desperately needs to talk to his cousin, feeling an urgent desire to share everything. He needs advice, then he remembers that private investigator. The man told him to reach out immediately if any new information turned up. This realization makes the situation feel incredibly urgent, but if he tells them every detail, if he tells them what happened, there is a massive risk. They will think he is crazy. They might just lock him away without trying to understand a single word. On the other hand, his brother vanished under mysterious circumstances, and the detective warned him. He is next. Yuansi could easily disappear like his brother did. So it looks like their group actually handles these supernatural events. When he finally calls Li Dongji, the young man is absolutely shocked by his joyful reaction. Dongji is actually happy to hear that he successfully escaped from the spirit world. This unexpected joy is a huge surprise. Instead of anxiety, he shows relief. He warmly congratulates Yuansi on his brand new status as a traveler. Dongji expresses high admiration for this achievement, emphasizing how important it is. A massive success, this opens up entirely new opportunities. The big difference is that Dongji is already officially registered. He offers Yuansi a choice, letting him decide his own path. Yuansi must choose whether to accept these powers and special privileges. Rulers have two main paths. The first is to go completely official. This gains you status and resources. The second is staying a lone practitioner. Stay clean. As a rogue practitioner, you cannot do illegal things. Without wasting a single second, Yuansi immediately decides to join the organization. He is ready to work for the greater good of society. They agree to meet tomorrow morning at exactly 8 o'clock to discuss their next strategic moves. This requires absolute focus and coordinated efforts from both sides. Our hero finally apologizes for hiding the secret map during the investigation. Deep down, he hid the map at the bottom of the box. Now he wants to restore trust and show a highly responsible attitude. As night falls over the quiet city, residents head inside to rest. The streets grow completely silent and calm under the soft, gentle glow of the lampposts. Morning arrives quickly. The bright sun streams directly into the room. The bright light fills his space with warmth, dispelling the darkness. It brings a truly welcome sense of a fresh start and brand new opportunities for action. Hunger strikes. He steps out into the hallway feeling completely empty. His empty stomach is growling loudly, demanding immediate food. He absolutely needs to find something to eat to restore his strength and physical energy. Honestly, sleep was impossible every time he closed his eyes. He felt a cold ghost standing right behind him, watching silently. No peace, the terror made it impossible to relax. His grandmother and aunt immediately notice his exhausted state. He looks totally worn down and gloomy. His haggard face instantly causes them deep concern. Trying to help, Jin teasingly jokes about what her nephew did last night. She laughs and pokes fun, desperately trying to break the heavy tension. But ignoring her completely, the boy silently steps toward his grandfather. He seeks the steady, reassuring warmth of the only man who brings him peace. Safe at last, Yuansi asks his elder about the missing construction crew. An online article had sparked his curiosity, and now he wants the full story. He desperately needs answers, but the old man looks hesitant. The grandfather explains that it happened far too long ago to remember. Decades have passed, and the chilling details have completely slipped away. All that remains are vague shadows and a lingering sense of unease. Overhearing them, the grandmother chimes in with a terrifying detail: the sole survivor had vanished shortly after. Talk about a chilling twist to the story. This sudden revelation triggers serious anxiety about the dark forces around them. His grandmother points out his memory lapses, but the old man counters. He firmly warns her to trust solid facts rather than baseless rumors. The older people get, the more they fall for wild tales, but soon he realized that the missing worker was actually trapped in the temple for 36 hours. He was completely locked away, unable to escape that bizarre, supernatural space. The upcoming second trial will be exponentially more brutal and dangerous. If the young man wants to survive, he must dig up information. Learning from the mysterious organization is his only way to prepare himself. He must master the rules and predict every threat before leaving. Packing his gear and grabbing some breakfast, Yuansi lies about taking a walk. He desperately wants to hide his true, perilous mission from his family. His grandfather quietly watches him depart, deeply suspicious of his grandson's plans. He remains silent, deeply torn between intense worry and a burning curiosity. He tries to anticipate the boy's next moves. Outside, a car waits. Its engine hums softly in the quiet street, passenger door wide open. The ride is ready to whisk him toward a brand new battlefield. Lethal challenges await him there. Peeking past the fence, Yuansi checks. He makes sure it is safe. Now watch, he has to proceed carefully. Confirming the path is clear of any watching eyes, he slips out. Inside the car, a stranger gestures warmly and invites him to enter. This welcoming gesture offers a brief, fleeting sense of safety and relief. Yuansi steals one last look back, then strides confidently to the vehicle. He feels completely composed and ready to face whatever comes his way. There is no turning back now. Once inside, the driver offers a drink. Yuansi immediately asks for a cold cola to quench his burning thirst. He downs it quickly, feeling a sudden, much-needed surge of fresh energy. The investigator smirkingly replies that he should have bought one himself. But Yuansi silently smiles. Why spend his own money when it is free? He gladly accepts the free drink, wisely avoiding any needless, petty bickering. They speed off toward the facility where his official papers will be signed. Along the way, the investigator decides to lay down the law. He begins a crash course on their primary rules and survival codes. He introduces himself, Li Dong, a veteran Tier 3 explorer. He offers his years of experience to mentor the young rookie. But this spirit world, it is a completely supernatural anomaly. Science cannot explain it, not a single researcher understands it. Even the massive organization is completely blind to its mechanics. This world exists right alongside reality, stretching far beyond known borders. Only a chosen few can ever cross over. It takes a key. Specifically, the main organization calls this crucial key a character map. Getting one triggers a trial, a brutal, incredibly difficult trial to survive. Clear the mission and you unlock your class traits. Suddenly you get real powers, but the selection system, it is a total mystery. No one knows how players are chosen. Sometimes cards just materialize directly inside a person's physical body. Others simply stumble across them, abandoned on the street, pure luck. Some get them by clicking a random link online. Crazy. But get this, clearing that initial run is only the beginning. To level up and gain real power, you need constant quests. Li Dong suggests Joni follow his footsteps as a scout. For 2 years, he only entered the other world once every 3 months. Even with that extreme caution, he ended up on the absolute verge of death. Now he runs with teams. That is the real trick to survival. To Joni, this whole terrifying ordeal sounds exactly like a high-stakes multiplayer game. Going solo is an absolute death sentence. The mortality rate is sky-high, but teams actually stand a chance. Worlds are split. You have deadly worlds and penalty worlds now. Fail a penalty run and you just lose points, but why are solo runs deadly? Li Dong explains that team runs let you rely on other classes. Solo runs, they are custom-built to counter your specific abilities. Every class has specialties. For scouts, it is tracking and deep analysis. In those solo worlds, Li Dong had to play detective. He spent his entire time dodging enemies and struggling to survive the wilderness. Dungeons vary wildly depending on your class and current stage. Joni realizes the spirit world tailors itself to the individual. His own natural talents align perfectly with these hidden rules. Just when things seem perfect, Li Dong drops a chilling reality check. He explains that Liu Bing is likely already dead. Silence fills the room. It is a heavy, suffocating weight on everyone. The harsh, bitter reality of this world sets in. Joni is stunned. Li Dong adds that way too much time has already passed. Normal trials only take a few hours, or 2 days at the absolute most. He has been gone for 4. Joni asks about higher stages. His voice is sharp and impatient, demanding to know what lies ahead. He needs to understand the dangers of those advanced tiers. Levels above the transcendental stage can take much longer. Each step up demands absolute focus, endurance, and sheer willpower. This survival game demands a deep understanding of inner strength. The young man hoped Brother Bin had already cleared this level, leaving nothing to do but pray it was true. He just had to believe. Until their paths crossed again, the young man planned to stick close to the organization, but before the guide introduced him to the rest, his morality score had to be checked. That single number decided how the other rookies would treat him and whether he could actually survive under their strict rules. Staring directly at the status screen in his profile, Yuansi replied that his score was 60, keeping his voice steady despite a sudden wave of nerves. He knew exactly how much this crucial information mattered, and for newcomers, this was the ultimate make-or-break test. If their morality score dropped too low, the system triggered a deadly penalty mechanism, and every single traveler in the city would instantly get a quest to hunt him down. Talk about terrifying. Our hero worried this meant he could never break a single rule again for the rest of his days. A restriction like that completely stripped away his freedom, forcing him to overthink every single move just to avoid some stupid penalty. He quickly asked if doing manual labor or reading boring textbooks counted as bad deeds, desperately trying to figure out where the system drew the line on what was actually allowed, wanting to make sure his everyday actions did not break any rules. Inside, the young man was stressing out, thinking his free life was basically over, while his chest tightened with a dark, heavy dread about what lay ahead. Hearing his panicked questions, Liang burst out laughing and told him there was absolutely nothing to stress over, explaining that simple crimes like petty theft, mugging, or robbery only cost you up to 5 points, while actual murder deducted 10. If a crime caused massive casualties, the penalty would be decided on a case-by-case basis, but personal drama and everyday arguments would not affect the morality rating at all. A person just had to be decent. Stick to basic human decency, help folks out, and avoid the major laws, because those decisions directly determined a player's safety and reputation in this wild world. The young man quietly realized that concepts like law and morality were just artificial tools designed to maintain order, believing a natural world had no real use for such restrictions, but since this mysterious spirit world remained mostly a blank slate, these strict artificial laws were crucial for keeping control, especially when unknown forces could warp reality for everyone involved without warning. Finally, Zay arrived at the headquarters, stepping through the massive entrance and walking carefully down the corridors, scanning every detail. Being inside this place meant they had to stay fully alert and follow every single safety protocol. Guide added that losing your morality score was just as easy as building it up, explaining that to keep it safe, you simply had to avoid reckless, impulsive decisions because even the tiniest slip-up could drain your points. But if a player had serious cash, buying back morality points was a breeze, giving the wealthy a free pass to take lives without any consequences while hiding behind the system's hypocritical rules. Shifting focus, Dongs decided to introduce the massive organization they belonged to, the powerful Five Elements Alliance, explaining that it was split into 5 distinct factions. The guide listed them off: the 100 Flowers Union, the Fierce White Tiger Corps, the Blazing Red Flame, the Water God's Palace, and the Impenetrable Stronghold, explaining their functions and influence within the alliance. All these factions represent 5 distinct classes: the Wood Demon, Scout, Firemaster, Water Ghost, and the Ghoul. Each has its own unique abilities, specialization, and role in keeping the balance of power. Besides their company, there are other official organizations, and this specific one was formed only in the last 20 years. Before that, everyone acted on their own without any coordination, which often led to chaos. The investigator explains that the Wood Demons have a deep love for nature, and he admits he has never in his life met such intense fanatics who so fiercely protect every single tree. He does not even want to explain the others, because their affairs are just too crazy and any extra details could cause unwanted trouble or misunderstandings. Only intelligence is truly sensible, calm, and wise, with members who know how to assess the situation without emotion, plan actions in advance, and make solid decisions. The traveler explains to the boy that the abilities of different classes are like a game. Fire represents aggressive fighters, water means magicians with control and healing, earth means reliable defenders, and scouts act as observers. If he were a master of flame, the young man would already be roasting in a frying pan. Firepower is just too destructive and dangerous, meaning any carelessness instantly turns into a disaster. Dongi continues to praise the scouts, talking up their combat skills, but also mentions the night travelers, emphasizing that their unique abilities are something that no one has the right to question. Hearing this, Yuansi asks for more details about that class, wanting to understand their abilities, tactics, and weaknesses to get a complete picture of their strength and capabilities. Dongi explains that even at the initial stage, they possess extreme combat power, lethal skills, and that this class can communicate with souls, purify corpses, and control ghosts. But the catch is, such a class is incredibly rare, and right now there are no night wanderers in their local branch, so all these operations have to be postponed. Frowning, the investigator turns toward the boy as if to ask something, his gaze turning piercing and serious. Remembering that he forgot to ask about Yuansi's class, he hopes it is not a firemaster, because that power is not nearly as rare as other classes. Scratching his face, Yuansi looks right at the investigator and hesitantly reveals he is a night wanderer. Talk about a shock. The investigator feels both pride and excitement at this rare status, as he silently and attentively observes the hero, without saying a single word, intently analyzing his every movement, glance, and slightest change in behavior. Inside the tense, silent room, the man seems completely lost for words, standing there totally stunned, unable to speak from the sheer shock that froze his thoughts and stole his usual sharp reaction. Finally snapping out of it, the man grabs the youth tightly by the shoulders, looks him dead in the eye, and demands in a tense voice to know if he is really a night traveler. In response, Dongzi hugged him in absolute relief, completely overjoyed. He was incredibly grateful to have finally found someone with such a legendary class. The Night Traveler class was a legendary, massive catch. Every single big faction would literally tear each other apart for it. They would risk everything. In fact, the Purple Flame faction once tried to recruit a traveler when a girl from the 100 Flowers Union charmed him, turning him into a secret double agent for their side. When Dongzi asked for his spirit world ID, the young man calmly revealed his name was Yuansi Tianan, closely watching the elder's reaction. The elder simply nodded with quiet satisfaction. He warmly approved of the name, his eyes shining with quiet pride. Next up, they needed to get all the official hiring paperwork sorted out. He was looking at 20,000 a month, plus heavy mission subsidies. On top of that, he would get some pretty sweet bonuses for pulling off major achievements that caught the higher-ups' attention. Yuansi had zero questions, having already thought through every single detail. He wanted to make absolutely sure of his steps. He carefully weighed the consequences of everything he was about to do. Meanwhile, regular staff handled the daily grind in the background, keeping things running so the travelers could stay focused on main missions. The two kept walking down the quiet hallway, approaching Dongzi's office. They took their time, eventually arriving right outside the door. Stepping inside, Dongzi warmly invited the young man to sit down. He told him to relax while the official contract was printed. So Yuansi waited in silence for the paperwork to be finalized. Everything had to be perfectly drafted before they made it official. Just then, Guanya peeked her head into the office. She politely asked if they needed any assistance. Yuansi recognized her instantly as the phone checker. A flicker of surprise crossed his face as he recalled their encounter. He quietly kept his cool, though he definitely remembered her. Dongzi asked her to show Yuansi around and explain the processes, since he had to see the head manager urgently. Before he stepped out, though, he gave Yuansi a quick heads-up. Apparently, Guanya had a terrible habit of cracking really bad jokes. He would just have to get used to her unique humor. Dongzi also warned her to behave herself around the new hire. He did not want her making things incredibly awkward on day one. Nodding, Guanya playfully offered to answer any questions Yuansi might have, wanting to make sure he felt comfortable in his brand new environment. Watching her boss walk away, Guanya felt totally confused, wondering why he was basically skipping down the hall with such childish excitement. Shrugging it off, she handed the contract over to Yuansi and urged him to officially register his nickname in the database. That way, his spirit status was officially fully finalized. All of it documented and recorded. The girl realizes he already knows the basic rules of this place, but there are still crucial details and hidden catchpoints they need to clear up so he can grasp the full picture. Starting today, our young hero can never touch his old passport again. The organization is printing him a new one, which will be ready in 3 days. They are rushing his entire registration through at absolute maximum speed. Meanwhile, the spirit world system quietly makes it clear that his real name is completely forbidden. It constantly reminds him of these tight restrictions to keep him behaving cautiously in this dangerous world. Here is why the classes in this spirit world are divided into 2 distinct paths. The first features orthodox classes with recognized and legal abilities. The second holds the dark classes packed with dangerous properties. These dark travelers are usually absolute tyrants or bloodthirsty killers who make it their personal mission to hunt down orthodox class users. Seriously, revealing a real identity in a place like this is incredibly dangerous. Looking around, the boy quickly realizes their names are also fake, since every single identity in this world must be carefully masked and protected to keep them safe from sudden, unpredictable threats. But even so, they are an official faction. Usually their main targets are actual villains and rule breakers, because the system strictly enforces absolute justice and punishes any deviations. Suddenly, Guana asks the newcomer if he has a girlfriend. His absolute and immediate denial of it makes her smile, showing a mix of slight disappointment and surprise. She is shocked. She instantly covers her mouth with her hand to hide her surprise and hold back her rising emotions. Holding out her phone to him, she playfully acts like a protective sister and suggests he try a dating app to find a good match, watching his reaction very closely. But Yuanzi prefers the old-school way of finding love, wanting to talk face-to-face instead of using some online app, because that is the only way to truly understand a person. He even adds that he already likes someone, showing how deep and real his feelings are without needing any artificial setups or outside matchmaking. The scout is completely floored by this, never expecting such a raw and honest confession from a guy like him. And her eyes go wide with pure, undisguised admiration. Still, she is sure The young man is just making up this mystery girl, but he calmly states that if he is lying, lightning can strike him down right now. That proves he is dead serious. Letting the topic slide, she explains the team structure of the travelers in the canyon, breaking down the main factions and his upcoming entry into the White Tiger Squad after his trials. Clearly, team hierarchy is everything, but the young man says he will rely entirely on his mentor, Gu, trusting her deep experience and knowledge to guide him through this wild new world. She honestly loves mentoring energetic recruits, finding their raw enthusiasm and drive incredibly refreshing and making their mission much more lively. Back when Jun was 21 years old, he finally signed his official contract, carefully filling out every single line on the paper. He submitted his details and completed registration. When the scout read his registered class, she froze in her tracks, raising her eyebrows as she realized just how incredibly rare this awakening was. Once the crowd saw his night traveler class, the others went completely rigid with shock, unable to believe their own eyes. They couldn't hide their awe for such a legendary class. Guanya asked Yuansi if there was some kind of typo on the paper, carefully scanning his face to see if he was pulling a prank, but he just raised a finger, calmly insisting that every single detail was correct, confidently standing by every single word he wrote. The scout finally realized why their leader looked so smug, practically beaming over the massive success of their latest recruitment run. She grinned, stepping up to the new recruit, grabbing him by the beard. She welcomed him to the squad while watching him like a hawk and warned him not to go flirting with girls from rival factions. She spoke with absolute authority, letting everyone know she meant business. No one dared to laugh as they hung onto her every word. Yuansi spoke up immediately, giving them his word that he would never turn his back on them, sounding dead serious. His genuine tone immediately put the rest of the team at ease. But then she scrolled down to check his actual level, and her jaw hit the floor. He was still level 0, which made absolutely no sense given his legendary, top-tier class. Normally, once someone successfully survives the entry trials, they automatically bump up to level 1. Every mentor followed this basic rule. It was the only way to ensure proper skill development. Then a stamp on his file caught her eye. It showed his trial took place inside the infamous Ulan tunnel, instantly raising red flags. That place was a literal death trap. Guanya couldn't fathom how Yuansi survived, since that site was notorious for its extreme danger. What kind of insane circumstances forced him to go in there? Yuansi, on the other hand, had no idea why she was freaking out. He thought the whole thing went pretty smoothly and didn't get her panic. He couldn't wrap his head around why she looked so terrified. Honestly, he was more curious about the assistant guide they promised him. Going in blind without any instructions made things way harder than necessary. But the second those words left his mouth, a heavy silence filled the room. The air grew tense as everyone stared in disbelief. Absolutely no one expected him to ask such a clueless question. Feeling the sudden chill, Yuansi quickly tried to lighten the mood. He begged them to stop looking at him like he was doomed. There was no reason for everyone to look so utterly depressed. Deep down, though, Yuansi realized he had messed up big time. His own terrible luck had landed him in a corner, leaving him with a heavy mix of disappointment and dread. He would have to face the music. His sister decided to. She needed help fast, so she called her boss right away. Handling this massive, terrifying, completely out of control disaster on her own was just impossible. Everyone in the room was utterly terrified, making the hero brace for the worst. He knew his task was deadly, but there was another major catch. He had only explored 20% of this world before discovering that the main hall was actually safe. Fortunately, ready-made guides existed, explaining exactly what to do after passing tests. And following these basic rules was supposed to be mandatory for everyone. But when it came to the Yulan tunnel, things were far more complicated and deadly. So the clerk suggested he search the official Shanghai database. She hoped accessing these files would help him understand the task. The records listed every single location, objective, and mission rank. This file allowed him to thoroughly dissect every single aspect of his dangerous upcoming trials. Surprisingly, almost all of these other worlds had incredibly high survival rates for travelers. Of course, the bone-chilling Ghost Bride task was the one legendary exception to that rule. Other trials were relatively safe, capping out at difficulty rank A. With proper preparation, most travelers walked away completely unscathed. The hero kept browsing the site, searching for any scrap of information he could find. He desperately needed some helpful tips or hints to stay alive. Finally, he stumbled onto a specific file detailing the dark history of this dangerous area. It laid out every hidden secret and danger waiting inside. But the warnings hidden deep inside the file instantly made him freeze in absolute shock. The notes explicitly warned that the task was critically dangerous. To this day, not a single soul had successfully survived entering the dread Ulan tunnel. Staring at the 0% survival rate, Yuansi completely froze. A wave of dread washed over him, and honestly, can you really blame the guy? The sheer terror of the coming trial was completely overwhelming. Meanwhile, the manager sat in his lavish office, slowly swirling an expensive glass of red wine. He calmly reviewed the documents, deeply lost in his thoughts. Every slow, deliberate movement showed a man in complete control. He exuded the quiet confidence of someone who held all the cards in his hand. As an ambitious young commander, he was desperate for power. He wanted to gather loyal underlings and make his name famous. And this mysterious new night traveler seemed like a literal gift from the heavens above. Just then, a subordinate reported that they had found the perfect guy. He assured the boss that the entire organization would reward this crucial success with massive prizes. It was a major step forward for their entire operation. Suddenly, Guanya kicked the heavy office door wide open with a loud and deafening crash. She warned that disaster had struck, her face pale with panic. Every single movement showed just how incredibly serious the situation was. Without wasting a second, she blurted out the urgent news. The clueless rookie had just been assigned a deadly mission right inside the Yulan tunnel. This critical crisis demanded an immediate response from everyone present. Hearing this, Dong instantly choked on his expensive glass of wine. A look of pure, unadulterated shock and alarm instantly spread across his pale, sweaty face. He never expected them to send the newcomer to certain death. His temple began to throb. Pressing his fingers against it, he tried to quiet the pain. Panic was racing through his mind. There was absolutely no time to lose. He had to find Yuansi. He needed answers fast. There had to be a way out of this nightmare, but inside the office. He froze. A young clerk sat at the computer, utterly paralyzed. A suffocating, deadly dread hung heavy in the air around him. The poor guy was spiraling. He was totally convinced of his own death. This upcoming trial was a literal death sentence. There was no surviving. That looping panic only fed his fear, pulling him into sheer despair. Finally, the manager spoke up, trying to explain the rules calmly. Every newcomer has to face an isolated, custom-tailored trial. It is standard practice, meant to gauge a recruit's baseline grit. Just like you, every single veteran had to struggle. They pushed through brutal tests that pushed their skills to the limit. Quick decisions under pressure, that was the core of it. Survival meant proving his worth under extreme pressure. Only then would he unlock broken, high-tier abilities. His life literally depended on it. The manager decided to submit a request. He asked headquarters to scan their database for any helpful clues. It was their only shot at preparing him for this dangerous test. So the agency packed the stressed kid off home for the day. They promised to stay in touch, leaving him alone to process everything. Honestly, his mood was in the gutter, and who can blame him? He even asked his sister if he would end up as a lingering ghost. The creepy rumors about that church were clearly eating at him. Sensing his dread, she jokingly promised to remain a faithful widow to him. It was her unique way of showing she would stand by him. No matter how dangerous things got, she had his back. On one hand, her presence gave him a massive moral boost. But she also kept cracking jokes to keep the mood light. Without a word, Yuansi walked out to the car, completely silent. Step by step, he focused entirely on his next move. Honestly, his head was a complete mess of sheer anxiety. Not knowing what to expect made it almost impossible to plan ahead. He simply had no clue how to handle this mess. Guana assured him that the boss would dig up useful info. But seeing his heavy tension, she could only wish him luck. Our hero looked totally drained, lost deep in his thoughts. He tuned out the world, completely exhausted by the looming threat. Back at the office, a deep, heavy silence settled over the room. Only a few dim lamps barely cut through the dark windows. The high-rise felt completely isolated from the busy city below. Inside, employees silently pushed through their evening work, their eyes glued to glowing screens late into the night. She worked quietly, keeping the room calm. Guana carefully noted down key details on a paper sheet. She chose her words deliberately, leaving absolutely nothing out. This clear record was absolutely vital for the future. Next, she trained the rookie, warning them that Yuan sure Tanchun might be swayed by a woman from another faction, she explained. Every dark consequence of that mistake, the scout sat quietly, weighing past mistakes against her next strategic move. This deep, silent reflection completely consumed her focus. Her journal lay open to the page of the second unit. Turning pages slowly, she focused on every crucial note. She needed this vital info in the near future. Then, Guana asked Wang Tea if he honestly believed the boy could survive this insanely dangerous task. She watched him closely, searching for his genuine reaction. He admitted that the tick held some intel on the Yulan tunnel. But their odds were terrible. He doubted those secrets would help. Honestly, if they had possessed better intelligence on the area, they would have easily cleared this trial using their own. Night travelers and a few artifacts would have boosted his chances. She hoped to secure proper gear for him, but every artifact was highly specialized, and they had no clue which tools would actually keep him safe. Guana figured they would likely lose the kid without the proper gear or solid facts on the tunnel. His survival odds were practically zero, but get this, two methods existed to get artifacts. They could plunge into the spirit world directly, or hunt down another traveler to steal their gear by force, which demanded extreme power. Both paths were a nightmare. If a warrior perished in the spirit world, all their loot vanished forever, making these high-stakes heists an absolute gamble with death itself. The Qingming Festival had recently ended, marking the exact season when the Yulan Tunnel finally opens, prompting locals to prepare rituals and ancient ceremonies. Unfortunately, Wangai noted that the kid was incredibly out of luck, unable to exploit this rare tunnel opening or get any reliable help in time. Far away, the manager sat in his quiet office, thoroughly reviewing the latest documents to plan his next big moves. Every decision would impact his entire squad. He kept a sharp eye on his phone, dissecting incoming texts to stay 3 steps ahead of the game. He needed to foresee how this new intel affected his plans. To help with that, Liang constantly sent updates to Mr. Fu regarding the ongoing Yulan tunnel trial, detailing every setback and breakthrough, to ensure the boss had a perfect overview of the battlefield. This allowed him to act. Mr. Fu admitted he miscalculated the challenge, suggesting they contact the TIS for more intelligence. It was the White Tiger Principle, a sacred rule never to abandon your own. He had to save this kid, carefully planning out every single step. He calculated every impossible risk just to keep him out of harm's way. Losing him was out of the question, especially since he was still a new recruit. If they lost him now, game over. The team's entire plan falls to pieces. Meanwhile, Yuansi stood right outside the apartment door, looking completely frozen in hesitation. He stared blankly at the keyhole, trying to figure out his next move. He had to slip inside without causing any kind of scene. Pushing the door open, the young man quietly announced he was back. He kept his voice steady while scanning her face to ensure everything was fine. She immediately mentioned that his cousin had also made it back home. She spoke softly, but her eyes were locked onto his face the whole time. Something was wrong, she just couldn't understand what had happened to him. He looked awful, pale skin, exhausted eyes, and a completely hollow stare. Every movement hurt. He was just too weak to hide it anymore. Yuansi walked over to his brother and offered a barely audible greeting. He watched his brother closely, trying to look completely normal. His brother mentioned that their grandmother said he was looking for him. He spoke in a very relaxed tone, though he was clearly quite curious. He was trying to figure out the actual reason behind this unexpected visit. Yuansi realized right then that his brother wouldn't be able to help him. So he just shrugged it off, saying he didn't need anything after all. His voice sounded calm, but there was a distinct trace of disappointment there. His brother admitted he was completely powerless when it came to Ivan. Pure bitterness, his absolute helplessness was eating him alive. Just then Jin burst out of the room, holding up some wrinkle cream. She loudly insisted that this stuff was a literal miracle worker. She gestured wildly, trying her absolute best to sell them on it. Her brother shot it down immediately, saying he had no use for it. He didn't show even a single spark of interest in her skincare routine. No thanks, he was perfectly content to let himself age naturally. Watching them, grandmother jokingly called the eldest a total brat. She laughed softly, though she was playfully annoyed by his stubborn attitude. That brought a quick smile to everyone. At 30, he already looked ancient. She teased that he looked older than his own father these days. And let's be honest, how was he ever going to find a girlfriend? She was already tired of dealing with his father, so she begged him for peace. Soft voice, but there was a very clear warning behind it. It reminded them of when he genuinely believed his friend had another son. But as it turned out, the boy was actually a grandson instead. Classic mistake, but it brought a wave of quiet smiles to the room. The guests just laughed along quietly, choosing not to press any further. They sat back, watching the warm family dynamic play out naturally. A wonderfully light, comfortable mood settled over the entire house. Finally, the brother told grandmother to relax and announced he had to leave. He had to work tomorrow, so he quietly left to rest and save his strength. Avoiding any noise, Yuansi immediately asked about the conversation he had just overheard. He spoke calmly, yet his eyes gleamed with intense curiosity. He wanted answers, he pressed for every single detail. The senior explained that 2 people had vanished inside the Yulan tunnel. They were never found, even though security cameras clearly saw them walk inside. It was a total mystery. It left everyone deeply uneasy. He quickly warned him not to repeat a single word of this confidential secret. If anyone found out, the consequences would be severe for everyone involved. Hearing this, the grandmother simply could not understand. She wondered why they had not shut down the dangerous tunnel immediately. It was highly concerning that no real measures were being taken to prevent another tragedy. Our hero suspected those missing people might have crossed over into the temple. He had entered the temple, perhaps they had crossed over too. He pondered their disappearance. How could they have vanished? What on earth was actually happening inside that dark, mysterious tunnel? He wondered if those poor, helpless strangers would be able to survive inside for 3 long hours. Yet a small part of him felt relieved knowing he was not facing this ordeal alone. After all, the leader had already mentioned that night travelers were nothing new. These eerie disappearances were definitely tied to the spirit world. That explained all the eerie, unexplained events inside the Yulan tunnel. Meanwhile, back in the quiet capital, the morning sun was just beginning to rise. Warm light painted the city streets, casting long, peaceful shadows across the buildings. Peace filled the city. In his quiet room, a man lay resting in his lounge chair. He held a fan, lazily opening and closing it while soaking in the gentle warmth. Sunlight streamed beautifully through the window. Just then, a servant quietly approached him. A faithful servant approached him. He carried very important news. He did not want to disturb his master's rare moment of deep relaxation. Earlier that day, the elder had received an urgent letter from young Fu. The message was crafted carefully. It conveyed the utter urgency of the matter. An update had arrived. Their night traveler was about to be tested. This new traveler was facing his very first trial inside the notorious Yulan tunnel. So young Fu requested copies of all archived files on the location to prepare. He needed that data. It was crucial for his survival. The elder realized the Ghost Festival had just ended, aligning perfectly with the dates. Get this, the timing of that tunnel opening was absolutely no coincidence. He had to examine it. The dangers of Yulan tunnel were real. While they always welcomed fresh blood to the ranks of the night travelers, it was a shame that this rookie stood almost zero chance against that brutal place. The threat was immense. It demanded extraordinary power and skill. The elder approved sending the files, since their sect had abandoned that trial years ago. But he also wanted young Fu to be warned of one critical truth. This was no ordinary trial. It was not meant for beginners. Danger had completely spiraled out of control, far past normal spiritual activity. A single misstep would be fatal. It would ruin everyone involved. To save him, he strongly advised against trying to rescue the traveler under any circumstances. It was useless. Helping someone marked for death made no sense. Any intervention would only make a terrible situation worse. The S rank was the absolute toughest tier. But the notorious Yulan tunnel was an absolute nightmare. A pushed even the absolute strongest veterans way past their limits. To clear this trial, the Tias sect sent 2 first-level travelers directly to Shanghai. Just a few months ago, everyone was anxiously preparing to enter that dark abyss. But things went horribly wrong. One traveler vanished instantly. There was absolutely no trace left behind, no struggle, just a terrifying silence. They left behind only a few highly unsettling notes, warning others of the creeping dread. The other actually made it back, but upon re-entering, he also vanished. Both had top-tier gear, powerful artifacts, tons of real experience. Nothing worked. After that disaster, the Council of Tai finally quit. They completely scrapped any plans to cleanse the spirit world. Too risky, the losses were brutal, and success was virtually impossible. Preparation meant absolutely nothing, but what if someone actually pushed further? Imagine that. Any real intel they gathered would be an absolute breakthrough. It would solve everything, the deepest mysteries of the tunnel finally answered. Then the Elder dropped a real bombshell. The sect leader was summoning everyone to the capital. He wanted every active night traveler assembled for an urgent announcement that would decide their future. This crucial decision would directly impact how they handled all upcoming missions. With that, he waved his hand. The servant was dismissed immediately. No more talk. His orders were to be followed with absolute obedience. No questions asked. Later that night, Yuansi sat alone in his room. Wide awake, his mind was spinning with restless thoughts that just wouldn't stop. They completely robbed him of his peace. Focusing on anything was impossible. He closed his eyes. A memory from a few hours ago drifted back. He had been sitting right next to his aunt, quietly watching her play. The room was so peaceful back then, filled with a warm, safe silence. She had explained her theory. Horror games actually build immense mental toughness. They desensitize players to fear, forcing them to study how monsters move. That is how you survive, but she also had a much weirder idea. She genuinely believed she might wake up one day trapped inside the game. The wild thought excited her. It actually made her feel oddly relaxed. Remembering this, Yuansi realized the terrifying spirit world was exactly like a game. It clearly operated under strict, unyielding rules and deep, hidden mechanics. Make one careless mistake, game over. The consequences were absolutely lethal. Suddenly, his deep thoughts were cut short. Guana was unexpectedly calling him. The sudden vibration snapped his focus instantly back to reality. Pure alarm kicked in. He never expected her to call him. Especially at this ungodly hour, late-night calls usually meant sheer trouble was brewing. When he picked up, the female scout spoke up quickly. She wanted to tell him about some critical files sent by the manager. They contained vital info on the tunnel. She knew young guys rarely check email. So she decided to play it safe. He thanked her and promised to check. If he passed the test, he would treat everyone. He wanted a nice celebration to ease their nerves and shake off the intense stress. The young man quickly logged in, ready to check his inbox. He carefully studied the files sent over by his boss. Every single detail mattered to him, while the girl quietly waited on the other end. She listened closely, trying to analyze his every reaction. Not a single detail missed. Silence stretched between them. The hero read silently, slowly absorbing every single word. He was determined not to overlook a single important piece of information in the files. Then Guana asked him for a treat, holding him to his promise. To him, this became a silent, heavy obligation to fulfill. He simply had to complete the task. Whispering quietly into the receiver, the young man promised her that he would take care of everything. His voice remained steady, determined not to let Guana down. He set the phone down carefully, completely shifting his focus back to the test ahead. Every move had to be planned out with absolute precision. The scout knew these files came directly from the Tai sect, but still doubted them. But there was no guarantee they would actually help him. The data could be completely fake. Meanwhile, Wheezy was already downloading the files to check them. He prepared to use every piece of information to survive this upcoming, incredibly dangerous trial. For the first stage, the instructions matched up with his system. The details mirrored his own panel, giving him an instant, much-needed boost of confidence. Now he could easily map out his next few moves. And wait until you see this. The trial takes place in a majestic ancient temple, a relic of the Ming dynasty, holding centuries of dark secrets. Inside this sacred place, Goddess Sando was widely revered as the absolute, supreme deity. The priests worshipped her power, calling her their divine protector. She ruled over rituals, knowledge, and the spiritual order of the entire temple, back then. But honestly, no one could ever prove this beautiful goddess had actually walked the earth. Her legends remain mysterious myths, passed down through the centuries. Surviving the first 3 hours was easy, but then chaos. A sudden spirit attack began draining the player of his absolute life force and strength. Desperate, he had to fight for survival and find an exit. Only the night travelers could resist these ghostly monsters. In this pitch-black room, their sole salvation lay in a single, flickering ancient candle. Its light could ward off evil, offering a tiny chance. But beware, anyone who reads these ancient records will trigger a highly dangerous curse. It can only be lifted for 15 minutes before returning stronger. The lit candle in the main hall functioned as a highly powerful, ancient suppression artifact. However, it had a catch: it stripped all fear from people. Anyone sitting under its glow became entirely fearless, which was incredibly dangerous in here. This safe zone was a double-edged sword. Hiding forever was impossible. The candle practically forced them to keep exploring the temple. It demanded decisive steps from anyone trying to survive, but the player just sat there. He waited in the main hall for half an hour when suddenly a sharp cry for help rang out, along with a powerful roar that did not sound like any living creature at all. So he decided to explore. Yuansi had already figured out from the records that the main hall was safe, not realizing that the candle was actually providing protection, thinking instead that the goddess Sando was the one guarding the area as a talisman with her divine power. The cries seemed to come from the Bodhi trees. At the same time, he heard a voice calling out for help, though it was a completely different sound from the monstrous roar he heard before, creating a creepy, uneasy feeling. The files also warned that the Bodian was extremely dangerous and that a pair of red shoes would invite the player to dance, but during the dance, if he failed to memorize their patterns, the shoes would begin chasing him down. The player barely escaped to the main hall, but those cursed shoes still managed to shatter 2 of his ribs, and the relentless pursuers would not stop for a single moment until their target was completely dead. The reason behind the decline of the Sando temple remained a complete mystery, but Yuansi felt confident he could successfully complete this second mission. After finishing the files, the young man silently closed the documents and fell into deep thought, sitting in complete silence, replaying every single clue and detail he had just read over and over again. It seemed to him that this object condition sounded like something incredibly high level and powerful. Most likely, those cursed shoes were to blame for the deaths of those workers, since almost all of them had severely broken bones, clearly showing the signature attack pattern of those shoes. Surprisingly, he knew a bit about dancing, thanks to his uncle, but if even a first-level night traveler could not survive it, then his own chances were almost zero. Suddenly, disturbing thoughts crept into his mind, twisting together and forcing him to analyze every single detail. For any hidden traps or consequences, the night traveler pointed out that the dance moves were almost impossible to remember, but Yuansi understood that his regular headaches were caused by his absolute, perfect photographic memory. Meanwhile, Guanya was calmly taking a warm bath at home, enjoying the quiet and peaceful relaxation, when suddenly her phone rang and shattered the silence. She picked up the call and saw on her screen that the caller was the young man who had likely finished reading all the files. He was calling her right away because he wanted to ask a crucial question about this object condition concept, since he did not understand it at all and needed a clear explanation of the situation. She patiently explained that in the spiritual world, powerful artifacts were divided by their organization into 3 distinct types: object value, object condition, and a mysterious third category too, which she had no clearance, though all of them served vital functions. Still, it was well known that conditional items were extremely difficult to control, making their actual value far higher than standard artifacts. Those cursed red shoes mentioned in the files fell right under this category. If a challenger accepted their deadly dance invitation and fulfilled the condition, they could gain complete, ultimate control over them. But Guanya warned him that if she were in his shoes, she would never try to obtain them. That conditional item. Soon after, our hero cautiously asks if he can bring along his life-saving medicine just to be safe, but she replies that apart from the clothes on his back, absolutely nothing else is allowed inside, in her View he should just swallow the pills now to prepare for what lies ahead. So, Yuansi gets a wild idea to hide the pills in his mouth, fully realizing that pulling off a desperate stunt like this means completely risking his own safety. Guana tells the young man to stay safe, mentioning that his scorpions have some crazy luck on their side today, which might just save him soon. With the countdown ticking down to just 5 minutes, he has to make. Talk about pressure, he forces himself to make split-second choices. He gets dressed, grabs his gear, he double-checks every single item, so he does not miss a thing before the madness begins. He is fully ready now, outwardly at least he knows the score. Knows exactly what kind of hellish place he is entering. His equipment is locked down, ready to push forward without delay. He locks his bedroom door behind him, double-checks it just in case, to make sure absolutely nothing can interrupt his focus during the shift. With less than 1 minute left on the clock, he pops the medicine right inside, sticking to his risky plan with pure focus guiding his movements. The spirit world tears open, inviting him straight into the mysterious Ulan tunnel. His ultimate mission is to explore this strange realm, though he has cleared only 20% of it so far while slowly adjusting to the creepy environment. A system window suddenly flashes, wishing our player good luck in neon colors. It is a weirdly comforting bit of moral support before the deadly trial starts. Armed with all this info, Yuansi prepares for the sudden jump. He focuses his mind and steadies his racing thoughts. In the blink of an eye, the shift begins. He materializes in the dark main hall, fighting off a wave of dizziness. He immediately scans the shadows, looking for anything he might recognize. Keeping his mouth tightly shut, he realizes he is back in this familiar yet terrifyingly mysterious place, sending chills straight down his spine. And would you look at that, the risky pill trick actually worked. A massive wave of relief washes over him, his clever trick played off beautifully. With these powerful pills secured, he can finally tackle the quest of the red shoes since they possess some extremely unique supernatural properties. They will let him manipulate his surroundings to reach his goal faster. Slipping them safely into his pocket, Yuansi remembers there is no daylight here. Everything is constantly draped in a thick, eerie gloom that screams danger. He forces himself to treat this dark landscape like a hardcore video game, carefully scanning every single corner for crucial items or hidden clues. He quickly realizes that interacting with certain objects reveals their hidden descriptions. This is his chance to gather the essential intel he needs. So he decides to examine a candle nearby. During his very first run, he did not hesitate to touch it. He had no idea it was actually an artifact, which honestly turned out incredibly well. He received a digital file detailing the artifact's properties and hidden meaning. Yuansi decided to secure the main hall first before investigating the dark backyard. No stones unturned, he must uncover every hidden secret here. Every single outing had a strict 15-minute limit, or else the spirit would permanently latch onto him. Luckily, his special pills were a perfect trump card. During the dreaded red shoe test, at least he had time to prepare. But absolute terror quickly set in, paralyzing his mind and body. It forced him to play it much safer than he originally planned. Since the center courtyard was already cleared, he chose to push eastward instead. Shadows everywhere, he checked each corner, desperate for any subtle warning. If he simply hid inside the safe zone, he would eventually starve to death. Every passing minute of hesitation only drained his remaining energy and resolve. His strength was fading fast, he was slowly losing control. Summoning his courage, he took a deep breath and stepped into the dark. Walked tall, he had to face whatever new monsters lay ahead. The atmosphere grew heavy, and a suffocating darkness pressed in on him. Every tiny noise echoed loudly, prompting him to monitor the moving shadows. He crept down the narrow path, barely making a sound as he moved. His eyes darted around, searching for any hidden traps or lurking threats. The only illumination came from a scattering of cold, distant stars overhead. Silence ruled here, cold, heavy, and absolutely suffocating. Taking a cautious breath, Yuansi stepped onto an old stone bridge. Dark water crept beneath him, hiding unknown terrors in its depths. He trod lightly, keeping his balance while listening to the quiet, watery sloshing. Though his mind raced with panic, his focus remained sharp as a blade. He strained his ears, desperate for any sign of an oncoming threat. The guide file had explicitly warned him about the bizarre Bodhi tree ahead. Yet looking at it now, it seemed like a perfectly normal, quiet plant. Its branches reached out peacefully under the pale starlight, betraying no malice. He figured investigating the strange tree might actually trigger a breakthrough. So he edged closer, keeping his guard up for any sudden traps. Suddenly an ancient well loomed ahead, its dark mouth reflecting faint starlight. It felt as though some forgotten horror was waiting down in that abyss. If horror games taught him anything, wells were always a massive red flag. He decided to steer clear of it, giving the opening a very wide berth. But as Yuansi carefully stepped around, a loud crack shattered the quiet. He froze instantly, his heart hammering against his ribs in absolute panic. He had stepped directly on a brittle, decaying bone, snapping it in two. Shock and phantom pain shot up his leg, forcing Yuansi to gasp. He stumbled blindly, desperately reaching out for a wall to steady himself. When his eyes adjusted, he spotted a rotting skeleton crumpled in the dirt. It was another grim reminder of the poor souls who died here before. To be honest, seeing dead bodies barely even fazed him at this point. He had seen so many that they just felt like part of the scenery. Keeping his cool, the young man carefully examined how the skeleton lay. Looking closely, it seemed someone had violently snapped the neck, leaving a cold shiver. This place was deeply scarred by the brutality of the past. Who could do this? That chilling question kept bouncing in his mind. Yuansi turned over every terrible scenario, trying to understand their twisted motives. What monster had that kind of terrifying power? He sat in silence, staring at the bones. He studied its position, desperately searching for any hidden clues. Tattered clothes and dust painted a pretty grim picture of the past. Then out of absolutely nowhere, a sudden and eerie whisper cut through the silence right behind him. He spun around, eyes searching the darkness for the source. He immediately reached into his pocket for his own magical artifact. Yuansi gripped the object tightly, standing completely prepared to defend himself against any incoming threat. The mirror materialized in his hand, shining in the darkness. Using the mirror, he was able to clearly see what was happening behind him without turning around. He scanned the shadows, catching the slightest shift in the dark. At first, the glass showed only a smudge. It slowly twisted. Honestly, seeing that shape shift would terrify anyone. The ink morphed, a pale, spectral girl with tangled hair emerged. Her long, dark hair whipped around wildly in an invisible wind, radiating a truly suffocating aura. This horrifying entity pointed directly at him, commanding him to approach. Absolute terror gripped Yuansi, but his body felt a powerful urge to obey. Realizing it was Sadako, he screamed in pure horror. An icy shiver shot through his body, and his heart hammered like a wild, trapped animal. Panic-stricken, he bolted toward a nearby, decaying house in the dark. He dodged obstacles, footsteps echoing frantically in the dark. Spotting a narrow opening in the roof, he crawled upward with desperate strength. He hauled his trembling body through the crack, gripping the rotten wooden ledges to avoid falling below. Finally, the boy crawled inside, collapsing onto the dusty floorboards. He had escaped. A massive wave of relief hit. His pulse still raced wildly, but he felt temporarily safe inside. The previous traveler left no warnings, only writing that turning back was absolutely impossible for anyone. While returning to this creepy place was not explicitly forbidden, it was still highly discouraged. The ghost had likely emerged from the well, and Yuansi knew it. He assumed he was perfectly safe now that he had left. The terrifying spectral entity surely could not reach him from such a safe and distant vantage point. Letting out a deep breath, he wanted nothing more than to go home. He was completely exhausted, desperately craving the comfort of his own safe bedroom. So he pushed forward, exploring the thick darkness. Yuansi examined everything closely, searching for any clues to escape this place. Suddenly he stopped. A massive, towering door blocked his entire path. They stood colossal and deeply mysterious, making him hesitate before taking another single step forward. Yuansi paused, warily assessing the unknown horrors that might wait behind it. Would you dare open them? He slowly pushed against the heavy wood. They resisted, then they creaked open, revealing pitch darkness. A shadow loomed, a dark presence slowly detached itself. A vague, barely noticeable movement sent a sudden wave of anxiety through Yuansi. He stumbled back in total surprise. Adrenaline flooded his veins as a slight tremor shook his tense hands. Honestly, can you blame him? He had absolutely no idea what kind of monster he just witnessed. He stood frozen, listening closely to assess every possible sign of danger. Once the dust settled, things slowly came back into focus. The young traveler peeked inside, scanning the dark room. To his absolute surprise, everything was arranged with perfect order. Every single object sat exactly in its own proper place. The entire room felt clean, cozy, and surprisingly calm. Then he spotted a wooden ladle sitting on the table and stepped closer. He examined its simple wood, wondering if this basic tool held some secret. He suddenly remembered a classic legend about this place. The pure fluids of an untouched body could easily ward off evil spirits. He stared at the ladle, wondering if it could protect him from the dark. But could he really be considered pure? He had never even been with a girl. Which made him seriously doubt if this defense would actually work. Let's be real, his hands had already committed plenty of sins. So he hesitated, highly doubting his purity could trigger the liquid's power. Shaking off the thought, he focused his gaze back on the object. He studied every single notch, searching for some hidden power or purpose. When he carefully flipped the heavy wooden scoop upside down, a dull thud echoed through the room. Instantly, he braced himself and listened. Silence returned. Bowing his head, he peered outside, straining to hear the eerie whispers of the deep, dark night. Suddenly, lines of an old poem flashed through his mind, the written words coming alive in his mind with a strange, haunting truth. It hinted at the dark secrets hidden in this forgotten space. The verse told of a traveler who met a demon on a lonely night, vainly trying to drive the beast away with useless external tricks. But true survival lies within a pure, brave heart. This heavy truth struck Yuansi deeply, sparking real resolve. He finally realized that his own courage was his ultimate weapon. This first cabin was likely just a safe haven for weary minds. A cozy place designed to restore emotional peace and calm. With a lighter heart, the young traveler stepped back outside, treading lightly across the wet grass under a fading sun. He had to keep moving, so he pushed forward into the unknown. He kept his guard up, watching every single step closely. Soon he reached the next building, a dusty old armory. It was packed with ancient weapons, creating a heavy, tense atmosphere. The sheer seriousness of the place made him stay alert. Looking at the steel, he realized he no longer needed his crude tools. His raw skills and sharp senses were enough to face any threat. Judging by the old records left behind, this was just the beginning. He expected to find a special room on the temple grounds, one holding ancient secrets. A place meant to store crucial items or records for visitors. But instead, he finds a skeleton completely different from all the other bones scattered around. Some flesh still clings to the bones, looking incredibly creepy in this ruined sanctuary. Only two logical conclusions can explain this bizarre sight. Either it was artificial embalming, preserved on purpose by human hands, or unique local conditions naturally mummified the body over time. The first option is ruled out instantly, and the local climate makes the second theory pretty much impossible too. Oddly enough, the corpse has almost no wounds, and the bones remain intact. Nothing was crushed by boots. The only real clue is two deep holes on the neck. They look exactly like bite marks from some massive beast, hinting at extreme danger. A clear sign of a violent end, or a run-in with something wild. Suddenly, Yuansi's eyes widen. A strange sound echoes from the shadows. The heavy silence shattered instantly, forcing him to focus on every single movement. He grips his weapon tightly, completely on edge. He scans the dark room, ready for whatever might jump out. But honestly, he has no clue where the noise is coming from. Step by step, he creeps forward, every nerve in his body screaming. He tracks every tiny rustle, holding his breath as the echoes fade away. The door to the old armory stands slightly ajar, letting a thin sliver of light cut through. It barely lights up the dusty floor, keeping our traveler on high alert. Treading softly, Yuansi peeks around the corner, trying to stay completely hidden. He scans the room, desperately searching for whatever made that sound. That is when he spots a giant, jagged hole blasted through the nearby wall. Peering through the gap, he tries to figure out what caused this total destruction. Is there something dangerous still waiting for him inside the dark gap? It is pitch black in there, with only tiny beams of light cutting through. The resulting shadows stretch across the room in a truly threatening way. And then his eyes adjust. More skeletons lie piled on the floor. They are completely scattered among the rotting wood, covered in decades of dust. Hollow eye sockets stare back at him, making this place feel incredibly cursed. Suddenly, he spots something metallic resting near a skeleton hand. It looks like a knife. He reaches out slowly, hesitating for a second before he actually touches it. It is an ornate Buddhist ceremonial dagger, covered in sacred symbols. The elegant carvings leave absolutely no doubt about its spiritual importance. Yuansi realizes this is the exact weapon the central statue was meant to hold. Its shape and design match the ancient records he found perfectly. This thing is definitely a vital key to unlocking the secrets of the temple. Right next to the blade sits a massive chest, covered in thick cobwebs. It looks incredibly ancient, practically begging him to pry open its secrets. Wait, did that box just move? Creepy scraping sounds echo from inside. Yuansi freezes, listening closely before taking a very slow step forward. The lid suddenly creaks open on its own, revealing pale, clawed fingers. They slowly reach out into the cold air. This cannot be good. The traveler to recoil from the unexpected sight. The boy is so terrified that he is completely frozen, unable to make a sound as his chest pounds. Wildly, his eyes glued to those rotting fingers. Right then, the heavy lid of the chest slams onto the floor, making a sudden, terrifying crash that completely shatters the quiet and makes him shrink back in horror. A rotting corpse crawls out of the box, its twisted face coming into view as the entire room is bathed in a sinister crimson light, giving everything an apocalyptic, terrifying feel. This is a nameless undead creature, built to hunt in these ruins, moving silently through the shadows and leaving a suffocating sense of dread behind for anyone nearby. Yuansi realizes he has been wandering through here for way too long and tries backing away toward the main hall, keeping a close eye on the monster while trying to quiet his footsteps, but something is creeping up. Directly behind him, he whips his head around, straining his ears and bracing himself for whatever is about to lunge from the dark. Suddenly, a strange crimson glare flashes in his blue eyes, reflecting the bloody room light and giving him a deadly, focused stare. Another twisted, terrifying entity emerges, its dark silhouette radiating pure evil as its slow, heavy footsteps and gut-wrenching noises make Yuansi squeeze his sword. It seems like a powerful spirit. And he suddenly realizes 15 minutes have already flown by, ramping up his panic as he feels the walls closing in on him from every single angle. He needs to reach the main building, creeping as quietly as possible through the shadows while staying alert for any hidden traps or sudden attacks. The ghouls let out wet, rattling clicks that reverberate through the halls, making things 10 times more terrifying. It forces him to track every tiny shift in the dark, but look at his eyes. They are burning so red that they look like two tiny bleeding moons, casting a highly unsettling glare and smothering the air with pure dread. The poor traveler stands completely alone in the heart of this hostile, foreign ruins, silently begging to just go home. Dreaming of the cozy warmth of his family and comforting, familiar sights, he steps forward under the dark sky, wishing his grandmother or his uncle would suddenly appear to pull him out of this nightmare and keep him safe. But instead, a massive crash echoes right behind his back, a heavy, dull thud that instantly shatters the quiet and makes his heart beat at double the speed. Yuansi quickly bolts across the open ground, looking back over his shoulder to scan the area, refusing to let any monster get the jump on him. Suddenly, a rotting zombie leg bursts out of the dirt, and the sickening sight instantly makes the freezing air feel even tighter. The creature drags itself fully out, casting long, twisted shadows along the walls. You can practically feel his chest squeezing with absolute terror. He has zero backup plans at this point. He is completely defenseless. He stands paralyzed, brain totally fried as every second feels like a painful eternity. The fiend is closing the gap, and the loud, dragging steps reverberate so hard that he can feel the heavy vibrations shake through his core. With survival instincts fully kicking in, Yuansi bolts forward with everything he has, his chest pounding wildly as his legs carry him faster into the darkness. Trying to run, but the undead refuses to back down, locked in a high, aggressive stance, ready to lunge forward at any second, its freezing eyes radiating pure, lethal intent. Chills run straight down his spine. It is a dead body, but Yuansi cannot comprehend how a decaying corpse is moving this fast when it was totally motionless just moments ago. It is an absolutely paralyzing wave of horror. He pushes his legs to go faster, desperate to put distance between himself and this monster. Adrenaline floods every single nerve, forcing his trembling body to sprint past its limits. Within a minute, he realizes the brutal truth: running is not going to save him. This thing is closing the gap way too fast, and panic starts clawing at his throat. So he skids to a halt, gritting his teeth as he resolves to stand and fight. Fear hardens into pure determination. Every muscle in his body tenses, ready for blood. His stance shifts instantly. Now he is moving with a deadly, quiet focus. Each step and strike feels completely practiced, like he has run this battle 1,000 times in his head. He is forcing himself to take total control of this chaotic situation. He tightens his grip on the steel spear, finding a shred of hope in its heavy weight. The creature halts right in front of him, locked in a tense standoff. Its lifeless eyes stare him down, calculating his weaknesses before making the final strike. With a sudden roar, Yuansi drives his spear forward with everything he has. He thrusts the tip directly into the monster's chest, tearing through flesh and bone. The beast shudders violently, releasing a horrific shriek of raw, agony-filled rage. Hold on, he looks closer and realizes its heart was already ripped out long ago. Could this actually be the missing older brother from the monk's tragic letter? The horror of it hits hard. Suddenly, the corpse screeches even louder. The terrifying sound shatters the quiet night, echoing through the dark trees. It is a blood-curdling warning to anyone foolish enough to draw close. What follows is a desperate, bloody struggle where a single slip-up means instant death. Every parry, dodge, and desperate step determines whether he lives to see tomorrow. Yuansi uses every single technique he has ever trained for, fighting for survival. He chains together rapid movements and precise strikes to keep the devil at bay. Leaping high into the air, he aims a decisive strike right at the creature's neck. But right as his blade should connect, his expression completely freezes. Something completely unexpected appears, throwing Yuansi into a state of total confusion. His master plan is ruined. His blade misses the mark entirely, sliding right off. It leaves him entirely defenseless, desperately scrambling to find another option. He literally cannot cut through. The monster has steel-like skin underneath its flesh. Every single strike is deflected, making his frantic assault feel completely useless. Despair settles in. Then, the monster's eyes begin to glow a toxic green. They shine brightly in the dark, radiating a fierce, unnatural aura of death. His heart pounds like crazy. Its hands are tipped with razor-sharp claws. They glisten menacingly in the dim light, ready to shred anything to pieces. The beast lunges, reaching out with those deadly claws to tear him apart. The thick air around him is heavy with the overwhelming stench of death. He desperately struggles to evade, but his energy is completely depleted. Every single movement is agonizingly heavy. Fear and exhaustion have totally won. Each step feels like lead as both physical fatigue and absolute terror drag him down. Exhausted in body and mind, Oni pulled a talisman from his inventory. He desperately prayed its magic would give him a real fighting chance. Gripping the paper charm, he stepped up. He had to face it. He aimed it directly at the monster to trigger the spell. Sensing danger, the creature froze. It instantly recognized the threat. Its gaze filled with caution. Every movement became slow, calculated. Ready for a trap, the zombie hesitated. Then, a blast struck. The monster was flung backward, crashing against the floor with a thud. That single blast bought him precious time. He was alive for now. This beast was smart. It knew the talisman was highly dangerous. It reacted with speed, backing away to avoid the glowing seal. Now he could only pray the cursed well ghost would not appear. If that pale spirit joined the fight, his chances would drop to zero. Luckily, the talisman flared with light. It kept the darkness away. Magical energy erupted in waves, forcing the shadow creatures to retreat. Clutching the ward tightly, Oni kept his eyes locked on his enemy. He watched for any slight movement. He needed this charm to hold. His mind raced as he mapped out an escape with no errors. He knew exactly where to run, how to shield himself, and how to survive. Step by step, the young warrior began a slow, calculated retreat. Keeping the talisman raised, he maintained a fragile distance from the beast. Suddenly, he bolted, running as fast as his legs could carry him. He sprinted toward the main hall, desperately searching for a safe sanctuary. But that heavy spirit on his shoulder was actively draining his life. With every agonizing step, his muscles grew weaker, dragging him down completely. He became sluggish. His exhausted body simply refused to cooperate. Oni finally stumbled in. His heart was hammering wildly with fear. Stepping onto the safe wooden floor of the hall, he collapsed in relief. The immediate danger was gone, and he was finally safe at last. Clutching his heavily bleeding side, he tried to stop the flow. Oni gritted his teeth against the searing agony, fighting to stay conscious. He was fading fast, the sheer fatigue threatened to pull him under. Tearing off his blood-soaked coat, he forced himself to stand. He crept into the deep shadows of the hall, listening intently. The monster's sharp claws were surely laced with deadly corpse poison. With no medicine nearby, his survival depended entirely on luck. Let's see if his luck holds out. Infection was highly likely. He could only rely on his inner strength to fight the toxins. Every second counted, yet his mind felt strangely calm and empty. The fatigue had killed his fear, leaving only a cold focus. Glancing over at the wooden table, he noticed several burning candles. A strange, soothing mist drifted from them, altering his state. Gradually, the intense pain and panic began to fade away. Even with that brutal wound, his thoughts remained crystal clear. No more hesitation, he had to act. The situation demanded absolute decisiveness. He had to act right now. He had to push into the dangerous second stage. The shoes remained. They were an unexpected, terrible obstacle, slowing him down, drawing attention. They constantly reminded him of the fatal danger lurking around every corner. He understood the other artifacts were also directly affecting the shoes. Besides, Guana had warned him, fulfill the condition to tame this artifact. Then bend it to his will, but he still had to watch that agile zombie. He was not at all sure he could actually hit its forehead. Slapping a talisman on it would be tough given its frantic movements. Countless scenarios swirled inside his head, a wave of tension hit him. Each path brought fresh panic. He had to calculate every single step. Slapping a talisman onto that rapid monster was a massive gamble. Like a small child with a knife trying to kill a giant. Pure suicide. Nearby, the mysterious candle flickered, casting a soft glow. Shadows danced across the cold hall, wrapping the room in absolute secrecy. The boy sat quietly beneath the flame, gathering his lost strength. He needed his stamina back. Soon, he would face the terrifying yard. Even infected, a strange, burning confidence began to take over him. His sheer determination was starting to completely overpower the physical pain. He reached down, he grabbed his discarded jacket, searching the pockets. He quickly pulled out the pills, hoping they would slow things down. Even a temporary fix would buy him some desperately needed time. Standing still meant death. There was nobody else coming to help. This suicidal mission was his alone. He had to finish it. Stepping out into the open square, the traveler let out a shout. He wanted those shoes to show themselves, to obey his will. Standing right in the center, he waited in agonizing, tense silence. His hands shook violently, his heart hammered wildly against his ribs. Suddenly, the sharp echo of approaching footsteps shattered the quiet. Click, click, the light tap of high heels on the hard tile. His chest tightened instantly. That familiar, terrifying red footwear was back. They gleamed under the soft candlelight, almost daring him to step. But trust me on this, things were about to get very unsettling. The empty red shoes had walked right out of the main hall. They were moving entirely on their own, guided by some unseen force. He spun around in utter disbelief. He never expected them here. Fear and cold hesitation warred within him as he froze solid. Yuansi realized this cursed item was meant to cut off his escape, forcing him to fight back directly with absolutely no way out. They wanted to force him into a twisted dance of death. It was horrific, unseen, mocking entities were laughing at his terror. Yuansi asked his father for a blessing before initiating the reboot. He needed absolute focus and iron determination for what was next. Closing his eyes, he cleared his thoughts, preparing for the struggle. This was a highly dangerous gamble, and then his eyes shot open. His body instantly began radiating a green glow, as if his inner energy was bursting out. Proving he was ready to begin this dangerous test, but the young man did not understand what was happening to him, but he had no choice but to submit to events relying on raw instinct. Honestly, who wouldn't? His opponents turned out to be a pair of red shoes that had a will of their own, pursuing him with a terrifying, invisible threat, performing complex dance moves. They seemed to challenge our hero, inviting him to copy their steps and match their skilled, eerie performance. The young man's brain worked at maximum capacity as the spinning movements of the shoes flashed constantly before his eyes, forcing him to focus on every step and anticipate his opponent's next move. This was it. Everything was to be decided by a single, deadly dance where every movement was completely decisive, and his survival depended entirely on perfect precision. Life or death, Yuanking began to move, executing each step sharply and intently, trying to copy the red shoes exactly to keep control of the intense situation. He was incredibly glad no one could see him besides these shoes. Talk about embarrassing. Because it looked totally insane, and any bystander would completely misunderstand. His bizarre struggle, Yuanking kept dancing. No choice, he knew that in this moment. The boy's dignity lay on the line, and any mistake could instantly trigger a total disaster. Finishing the eerie performance, he bowed deeply. To show respect, concluding the hazardous duel, the young traveler was utterly spent. A thin trickle of blood ran down his nose, proving just how taxing this supernatural dance battle had actually been. The red shoes apparently deemed his performance worthless, and their mocking response hinted at complete defeat. He froze in sheer panic, but then a system window suddenly announced that the player successfully completed the challenging pair dance, confirming his victory and his incredibly precise movements. Still, they would only remain under his control for half the usual time, since the items graded his performance poorly, refusing to fully respect his skills. Then agony hit. The pain in his legs was so severe that he let out a sharp cry, buckling under the sheer strain of the ordeal. To cope, he swallowed a few healing pills, hoping the ache would ease up and let him recover his strength after such a taxing effort. His head cleared. He had actually survived. It was over, he felt immensely relieved, knowing his plan had worked out despite the extreme danger. The system panel showed that the main function of these cursed shoes was to kill and chase targets, proving their lethal and highly aggressive nature. They once belonged to a princess of the Western Kingdom, a legendary beauty and master dancer whom every nobleman in the region longed to marry, but her cruel stepmother deeply envied her talent and striking looks. Consumed by pure jealousy, she sought any way to lock away and humiliate the girl, eventually locking the princess inside a desolate, high tower. There, the lonely princess danced under the cold moonlight until she drew her final breath, holding on to her dignity until the very end. These bloody heels inherited her dying wish, which was to dance on forever in isolation. He began to dance, copying the princess's movements with unbelievable accuracy. The boy received specific instructions on how to handle the mysterious item, detailing its exact properties and controls to keep him completely safe. These incredible magic features granted him abilities far beyond ordinary humans, opening up countless new strategies to survive even the toughest situations. Even better, these boots could completely ignore obstacles, which was their main built-in rule, allowing him to press forward no matter what. But get this, Yuansi was frustrated that the effect lasted only 30 minutes, realizing it was barely enough time to master the gear. But as he analyzed the field, he realized this setup was perfect. 30 minutes would be more than enough to get the job done. The player stepped out into the courtyard, scanning his creepy surroundings as he dodged debris, focusing entirely on planning his next moves. But he looked pretty stiff, his motions appearing highly restricted and awkward. Those heavy magic shoes made it really tough to walk on uneven ground, dragging his speed way down. Still, the young traveler knew he had to push through the exhaustion and doubts weighing on him. Stopping now meant losing his only chance to survive this nightmare, and failing his mission entirely. Plus, those corpses and coffin-like chests remained scattered around, keeping the atmosphere incredibly tense and eerie. It was a brutal, bloody reminder of the slaughter that just occurred. But a massive threat still lingered. The monster, Yong, was missing. His sudden disappearance sent absolute chills down the traveler's spine. No one knew where he would strike, but a figure lurked behind, watching the traveler silently, masking his presence and waiting to strike. With a sudden burst of speed, the beast lunged forward, closing the gap in a flash to catch his victim completely off guard. But Yuansi somehow sensed the lethal threat creeping up behind him. Whipping around, he locked his eyes onto the darkness, ready for whatever was coming next, and there it was right behind him. The same hideous, mutated beast flew through the air with terrifying force. A sight so menacing it almost made his heart stop right there. Panicking, Yuansi lost his footing in those clumsy magic shoes. His arms flailed wildly, desperately reaching out for anything to grab. He tilted sharply toward the ground, braced for a painful crash. The world spun around him as gravity threatened to drag him down. In that split second, his survival instincts kicked into high gear. Somehow he shifted his weight midair, barely reclaiming his footing, and avoiding the ground, denying the hungry beast an easy meal. Frustrated, the relentless creature refused to back down, unleashing a deafening, piercing shriek designed to completely shatter Yuansi's focus. The sonic wave triggered absolute panic in his brain. Instantly, the zombie lunged forward with frightening speed, showing zero hesitation as it closed the distance to tear the young man apart. But check this out, our traveler still has those game-changing artifacts on his feet. It was this magical item that gave him stability and agility, helping him avoid danger and keep his balance during crazy maneuvers. He circled around, as if he were dancing, dodging attacks with graceful, quick movements, maintaining grace and control over every single step, allowing him to remain completely unnoticed. His graceful, highly unpredictable movements completely disoriented the creature, causing it to make mistakes and lose the accuracy of its attacks, giving Yuansi a critical advantage in this confrontation. The young man suddenly lost his balance and fell sharply to the ground, spreading his legs wide in a painful split, feeling intense muscle tension and sharp pain, but at the same time remaining fully alert to the danger around him. As a man, he understood well that such sudden, extreme movements were incredibly dangerous to his health, capable of causing serious injury or severe pain in his muscles and joints, so he mentally asked the boots to tone down their magical power a bit, hoping that this would help him maintain control over his movements and avoid injury. So together, they began to attack the enemy again, synchronizing Yuansi's movements with the magical power of the boots, creating an unpredictable and dangerous combination of strikes and dodges. And honestly, this next move is pure genius. They deliver a precise blow right to the face, striking the enemy with unexpected force, forcing it to retreat and lose concentration. The creature fell heavily to the floor, losing its balance as its body bounced from the blow, creating a loud noise and opening up an opportunity for Yuansi to make his next move. Yuansi immediately took out the artifact and instantly activated its power to freeze the creature, controlling its movements and preventing further attacks, leaving the enemy no chance. Zhang Shi began to scream loudly, realizing that its elimination could come extremely quickly. The fear of inevitable defeat caused it to panic and lose control of its actions. Yuansi's movements were confident and quick, with each step and gesture carefully thought out, allowing him to remain in control and effectively avoid enemy attacks. Within seconds, a piece of the artifact was stuck to Zhang Shi's face, holding firmly to restrict its movements and significantly reducing the enemy's ability to resist. The creature began to scream, trying with all its might to escape, but the artifact held it firmly, restricting its movements and depriving it of any ability to effectively counter. Yuansi, sweat rolled down the hero's face from the pure tension that hung in the air. The feeling of danger made his heart beat faster and his muscles tense, ready for any unexpected movement from the enemy. He watched the events unfolding before him closely, focusing intently on the creature's every move, preparing to react instantly to any change in the situation. Yuansi realized that he had finally dealt with Zhang Shi, feeling relief and satisfaction that his efforts and agility had finally paid off and the danger was temporarily neutralized. He would have hardly been able to do this without those magical red shoes, for it was their magical power that gave him the speed, agility, and control necessary to defeat Zhang Shi. Yuansi looked confidently to the side, knowing full Yuansi braced himself, tense and ready for the dangerous challenges ahead. He scanned the area, trying to spot any threat creeping up in the shadows. Right there inside a nearby well, the translucent ghost of a woman flickered quietly. She drifted in the dark, giving off a freezing, eerie energy that immediately grabbed him. Still, Yuansi had a lot on his plate right now, meaning she had to wait. He ignored the spirit for now, choosing to focus on much more urgent tasks. There was simply no time for distractions. Yuansi stepped closer to the dead body. He looked down, carefully examining the strange, glowing blade lying on the cold floor. He studied its razor-sharp edge, trying to gauge if it held any magical power. It might just save his life soon. Gently, he reached down. He picked it up to inspect the heavy hilt and the cold, foreign steel. He needed to know what kind of damage this thing could actually do. Turns out this was the demon subjugation pestle, a legendary, undead-slaying weapon. As Yuansi held it, a sudden surge of raw magic pulsed through his hands. He immediately realized that this weapon could completely flip the script on his survival. The weapon hummed with the divine, searing light of the sun itself. According to his system panel, it was the ultimate bane of all evil. This screen confirmed the sheer, world-ending power of this holy demon subjugation pestle. Honestly, Yuansi had already suspected he had stumbled onto a major god-tier artifact. Its bizarre, pulsing energy practically screamed that it could wipe out anything in its path. It made perfect sense. The dead guy before him must have wanted to use this. He probably tried to kill the Jiangshi with it, since nothing else would work. Only this holy pestle had any real hope of taking down such a monster. But the poor guy couldn't handle those cursed red shoes, taking a brutal beating. Their untamed, wild magic tore his body apart, leaving him with absolutely no escape. Mangled and broken, he was completely doomed. Then came the final, horrifying blow. He crossed paths with the beast, sealing his fate once and for all. Bleeding out and completely exhausted, he didn't stand a single chance at surviving. Now the clock was ticking for Yuansi. He had barely 5 minutes left. Before that terrifying, vengeful spirit would manifest directly on his shoulder. Honestly, who wouldn't be sweating bullets with a timer like that ticking? He had to quiet the female ghost in the well, and he had to do it fast. Even a single second of hesitation would summon that spirit, bringing an instant, bloody death. Pushing his terror aside, Yuansi slowly leaned over the edge and peered inside. He squinted into the pitch-black abyss, bracing himself for whatever nightmare waited below. But there was nothing, no one, even though he vividly remembered her here. Vividly remembering her crawling right out of this very stone well the last time. Shaking off the icy dread, the young man gripped his new artifact dagger. He squeezed the hilt tighter, feeling the raw, pulsing magic inside it. That warmth gave him a spark of hope, priming him to strike. He whipped around, scanning the area, still absolutely nothing. Just a heavy, suffocating silence and pitch darkness that made his skin crawl. He strained his ears for any sound. That 15-minute limit was almost up. The crushing weight of the countdown forced him to move, counting every heartbeat. Every second mattered now. He had to brace for the coming onslaught. He heads back to the main hall, leaving that deadly zone behind to continue. His journey, next up, more dangerous trials. He must prepare himself. Young warrior rests in the main hall, the stifling air pressing on his chest, and the creeping corpse poison flares up. It is getting worse. Severe dizziness and a wave of weakness. Suddenly, his breathing starts growing. Far more shallow and labored, he knows all too well that his precious time is ticking away as his life force slowly drains. He was able to clear out 2 structures and take down Yongshi, but his quest is far from over, meaning a hidden threat still lurks somewhere close. He has already searched every corner of this massive building, still absolutely nothing. That one mysterious, untouched room remains hidden, completely haunting his thoughts. Since the backyard was totally clean, he confidently checks it off. No secret room out there, none. He keeps searching. The traveler stops to think, what did he miss? He replays every action, every small clue, and every single step. Even the tiny details that seemed so minor before. Suddenly, his gaze locks onto the grand goddess statue standing in the center of the hall, its odd placement and subtle signs of wear. Look too suspicious. He realizes his mistake almost instantly. He completely overlooked this massive hall earlier, blinded by simple overconfidence. His own blind pride played a truly brutal trick on him. The towering stone woman is now his primary target. Her majestic pose holds the key to the entire mystery. Joni quickly realizes he must place the demon-conquering pestle in her hand. Only this action will trigger the magic and open the way. He starts scaling the massive statue, slowly climbing to the top. He pushes past sketchy handholds and unstable ledges to reach the spot. With no time to lose, Joni carefully places the dagger into the cold stone hand. Now he waits. He holds his breath, waiting. His heart pounds with intense anticipation as he waits for a reaction. He is still wearing those bizarre red shoes, but he has fully adapted to them by now, and leaps around with absolute freedom. Suddenly, the wall directly below the goddess statue starts to fracture and split open, instantly catching his eye as a hidden passage begins to show. Joni slowly edges closer to the opening as heavy pieces of stones start to break away and crash down around him. He carefully watches his step to avoid being crushed by the falling masonry. Through the rising dust, he sees his instincts were entirely correct. The crumbling wall uncovers a completely new, untouched chamber hidden deep behind the solid rock, completely out of sight until this very moment. The secret entryway opens up a pitch-black, narrow tunnel that leads straight into the dark. It whispers promises of dangerous secrets and great discoveries. Heavy boulders continue to rain down, smashing violently onto the floor and kicking up thick clouds of choking dust that force him to tread very cautiously to avoid the debris. Now, Joni stands directly in front of. He needed to find whatever was buried deep beneath those heavy boulders. Everything now rested on how fast and sharp his reflexes were. His hand wrapped around the dagger, a weapon finally in his grasp. Now he actually had a fighting chance to finish this suicide mission. He needed answers from this dark cavern, why this temple lay in complete ruins. What dark force could have triggered its slow, agonizing collapse over time? The artifact hummed with the blinding power of a trapped sun. To wake it, however, he had to offer up his own life force. He felt his own breathing falter. The system panel was clear. Activating the weapon meant death, a terrifying price that made him freeze. He hesitated, weighing the heavy cost. Still, the dagger held the key. He knew this blade was his only way to unlock the truth. Its mysterious power would rewrite the path of his entire journey. With the breadcrumbs laid out so clearly, he had no other choice. He had to push forward, ignoring the looming threat of the unknown. Grit teeth, he plunged the sharp blade straight into his own leg. Hot blood poured out, yet an icy chill washed over his body. A brutal reminder of the sacrifice. Suddenly, the whole cavern erupted. A blinding radiance burst forth, exposing every hidden corner of darkness. Raw, ancient magic pulsed from the blade, shaking the very air. The young warrior stood completely dazed, unable to comprehend the chaos. The sudden explosion of pure energy left his mind completely shattered. Everything spun into static, then something inside him began to shift. His eyes flashed, burning with a sharp, supernatural yellow glow. It was the clear sign of a wild, deep power awakening. The shadows remained, but now his vision sliced clean through them. Hidden paths and forgotten secrets laid themselves bare before his eyes. Instantly, his ragged breathing stilled and the crushing fatigue vanished. The burning agony inside was gone, replaced by an eerie calm. Only the throbbing wound on his leg kept him grounded in reality. The deadly poison was completely gone, meaning his blood sacrifice had worked. It was a brutal trade, but survival in this hellhole was worth it. Stepping forward into the dark, he activated his newly acquired vision skill. Trapdoors, crumbling stone, and jagged drops all became crystal clear. Hidden pathways through the pitch-black abyss opened right before him. His golden eyes pierced the void, mapping out every subtle danger. Then he spotted something strange on the cold stone walls. Deep, deliberate carvings lined the passage. This was no natural cave. Someone had carved this massive tunnel out of the rock with purpose. Whatever lay waiting at the far end held his ultimate answers. The truth was close, buried deep within the suffocating blackness. He was finally going to solve the mysteries of this temple. Wait, a faint, desperate cry for help echoed through the silence. Adrenaline spiking, he bolted forward into the dark, keeping his guard up. Suddenly, a menacing crimson glow flooded the entire corridor. Anxiety made his heart pound fast, forcing him to take every step with caution. Sweat dripped down the young man's face as he witnessed the madness unfolding right around him. And realizing the colossal scale of this nightmare filled him with terror and awe. Agonized human faces hung from the branches of a massive, ancient tree, creating a gruesome, horrific spectacle that sent his stomach sinking straight into his boots. The boy stood frozen, completely paralyzed by a sight that bypassed his wildest nightmares and left him entirely helpless. Meanwhile, those twisted, weeping creatures kept up their agonizing wails for help, their voices piercing right through the pitch black night, sending desperate echoes into the air for anyone who might listen. To their agonizing cries, they begged for salvation, bitter tears streaming down their filthy faces, reflecting the raw terror of this cold, desolate place. Honestly, it looked like no living soul had set foot in this creepy tunnel for centuries. Thick, dusty cobwebs blanketed the crumbling walls, and the silence was so heavy that it felt far more crushing than the stone blocks' decay around them. Shaking off his shock, our young traveler curiously asked who this colossal being was. trying his best to squint through the thick gloom to see its massive body, which was almost entirely swallowed up by the darkness wrapping around the room. The creature answered in a deep, booming voice, explaining it was simply an ancient tree that had watched over this world and countless generations for centuries, guarding ancient, long-forgotten secrets deep within its massive roots. With a shaky, trembling voice, the boy asked if it was the tree that slaughtered all the temple disciples, fighting to suppress the sheer panic gripping his heart while hoping for some other explanation. Pure madness, there was just no way to justify it. But the tree denied it, leaving the boy with even more burning questions, as its towering branches and silent stare guarded secrets he could never hope to solve. Then the old tree dropped a bombshell, adding that this was actually the work of the cruel mistress of Mount Sandu, a being whose legendary and terrifying power dominated the entire region, making even the absolute bravest warriors shake with fear. The young man knew exactly who the tree meant, and a cold shiver ran straight down his spine. The mistress of Mount Sandu was notorious for her absolute cruelty among any unfortunate travelers who dared step into her territory. She was the legendary goddess of the night who rose to power during the Ming dynasty. Her terrifying myth persisted over the centuries, her dark aura and incomprehensible power striking pure, unadulterated fear into everyone. But wait, here is the thing. Our guy did not get why a god would slaughter simple temple disciples. While his mind struggled to find any sense in such a horrific act, and his heart was filled with confusion, the tree spoke again. The end of the Dharma era is near. It said, so cultivators simply cannot achieve a major power breakthrough anymore. To gain immortality, the mistress of the mountain chose the path of demons. Plunging herself into absolute darkness, she sealed her body inside a stone coffin, using the sacred Bodhi tree to trap and lock away evil spirits. All this was so yin energy would nourish yin, keeping her original spirit alive. This terrifying goddess of the night stayed strong by devouring innocent human souls, boosting her dark magic and control over the world. No mortal could possibly resist. But Jan ended up devouring far too many restless souls, absorbing their years of gathered will slowly birthed a conscious spirit, standing right before the young traveler, radiating ancient wisdom and a cold, eerie power. Countless travelers had stumbled into this cursed grove and met their doom because the corrupted banyan tree and the night goddess's curse made every step a deadly trap. This tree absorbed vengeful spirits' pure hatred, waiting endlessly for a savior. For a savior to end the fallen goddess's reign, all this time, storing centuries of raw power while waiting patiently for the day when light would finally banish the darkness. Hearing this, Yoni realized something. This whole setup felt exactly like starting an epic quest in a video game, where one choice shapes the future and brutal trials wait ahead. He immediately asked what his next move should be, desperate to figure out the rules of this dangerous trial. After all, it was not just his own life on the line, but the very balance of this entire world. Then, the massive tree gave his order, open the stone coffin and stabbed the mistress of the mountains straight through her heart to finally end this nightmare. This act alone would free all the trapped souls and restore balance. Half of her sacred yang soul was sealed inside his newly found blade. Plunging this blade deep into her chest would permanently seal away the rest of her power. Without that vital soul essence shielding her mortal form, her physical body would instantly rot away. Once she vanished, Yoni could easily leave this hellhole unharmed, escaping the ancient dark forever. Centuries eating away the lives of so many, the ancient tree couldn't understand why this young boy still hesitated. To the tree it was slaying the goddess and ending the dark threat was the only logical choice. But human fear and hesitation were foreign concepts to a plant. Yoni stayed silent, his mind spinning in absolute chaos. Dread filled his heart and he soul buckled under the sheer weight of holding so many human lives in his bare hands. He was facing a massive, pivotal choice. One wrong step would ruin everything. This was not just about keeping himself safe. The fate of every single soul tied to her rested on her. It is a crazy amount of pressure, right? Steeling himself, Yoni asked if the banyan tree was actually the temple's ancient high priest, hoping to uncover some link to the tragedies that happened centuries ago. But the tree gave a chilling reply. That priest was actually the very first soul consumed by the mountain's mistress. His soul merging with her darkness, he became just part of the cursed chain wrapping through the deep tomb and crawling all the way into the shadows of this Tunnel first turned into a mindless puppet, then into simple fertilizer, now if Yoni had doubts, he must open the tomb and see for himself, to truly grasp the terrifying strength of the mountain's mistress and understand the full weight of her fall. Yoni asked for help opening the ancient, terrifying coffin, feeling a mix of pure dread and determination. He knew that facing this horror was the only way to uncover the truth and make his final choice, but the tree quickly explained that it was just a motionless trunk. Its only job was to watch, wait, and gather strength over the centuries, leaving the actual fighting to the brave souls who entered. Take responsibility, but the player soon realized that was not the real issue. The coffin actually held the temple's senior priest, and that giant oak tree was his protector, keeping ancient secrets and maintaining a balance between two different worlds. But some massive misunderstandings had twisted the truth over the years. A woman named Sandwa rose to power during the Ming dynasty, and this temple was built in her honor before the disciples suddenly vanished. That strange disappearance took place during the reign of the Emperor Yongle. About 50 years separated these events, and main hall records called her righteous. But her tragic downfall was portrayed in a completely distorted, one-sided way. The most critical detail hidden within the disciples' diaries was a chilling warning. Their master could not be trusted. Talk about a wild plot twist for our hero. With that clue, Yuansi finally understood why the master wanted them all dead. Underneath that holy, righteous exterior lay a dark and twisted mind. Fear and an endless thirst for power had corrupted his very soul. He was nothing but a tool now. Meanwhile, the tree spoke up, insisting that his caution was completely useless, as it meant no harm. From the very start, the ancient entity claims to have had no evil desires. It only watched from afar, waiting for the young man to make his decision. But Yuanzi knew better. The creature either refused to act or simply could not. Even without bad intentions, its massive power came with heavy restrictions. It could not step in directly, dumping the entire burden onto the boy. The master had a favorite method of killing, a truly brutal habit. He snapped his victims' necks, a thought that sent a cold shiver down Yuanzi's spine. That twisted old man had always hidden a deep, vicious cruelty. The neck snapping was likely tied to a dark technique that enslaved minds. It did not just end lives, it forced their souls to submit completely. Just then, the massive tree grew tense, a detail that Yuanzi caught instantly. Its giant branches began to shudder, and its voice lost all composure. The sudden panic broke through its usual calm and majestic facade. A mysterious night traveler had previously warned him about two major threats. First, the tree was incredibly dangerous and not to be trusted. And second, he could never look back, or he would lose total control. He thoroughly searched the bottom of the old well, but found absolutely nothing. The well was perfectly normal. The real danger lay hidden in the tree. Suddenly, a mysterious woman called out his real name, shattering the illusion. Thanks to a holy charm, those mind-bending illusion spells had zero effect on him. Having lured Yuanzi into this trap, the enemy wanted to kill him through lies. But with illusions rendered useless, a direct physical strike was his only option. The monster prepared to strike, hoping to catch the boy completely off guard. Instead, Yuanzi stepped forward, refusing to give his opponent any room to breathe. He drew his sacred dagger, feeling a surge of pure spiritual energy. He was ready for the final, decisive strike that would end this nightmare. He drove the blade deep into the trunk, piercing the ancient wood. The colossal tree shuddered, fully feeling the weight of the boy's power. Everything stood completely still as the entire forest held its breath. A brutal end was inevitable. Flames erupted, wrapping themselves around the ancient tree's roots. Scorching heat filled the air, turning the chamber into a chaotic nightmare of thick, crackling smoke. Deadly clash. Still, he stepped forward confidently. Acting decisively, every stride was calculated, precise, and coordinated, showing his iron resolve to finish this, regardless of the massive danger. He edged closer to the threatening, tangled branches, his eyes burning with determination. Every heavy footstep loaded the air, compressing the atmosphere under the sheer weight of the coming struggle. Up ahead, absolute darkness, shadows swallowed the path, fueling his anxiety and making his heart thump with anticipation. Then the beast's horrifying face suddenly loomed out of the dark, blocking his path and ordering him to halt right there. Its cold gaze was absolutely piercing, seemingly reading his mind, causing Yuan to freeze in terror. But since Yuan refused to submit, he prepared to fight till the end, gathering every single ounce of his remaining strength to deliver a massive, absolutely devastating final blow. Fueled by sheer rage, suddenly a strange black vine erupted from the ground, creeping slowly but with terrifying certainty toward the trapped warrior. As if hunting him down, wrapping him in shadows and raw terror, Yuan stood frozen, scanning his surroundings in confusion, totally paralyzed because one wrong move could be his last. But a sudden survival instinct kicked in, and he gritted his teeth, throwing his body onto the hard, cold stone floor, feeling his heart pounding furiously against his ribs while adrenaline flooded his entire brain. Desperate to stay alive, the young hero scrambled to evade the threat, feeling a wild rush of energy pumping through his veins as his chest pounded. Drawing his blade, he hacked away at the massive, encroaching vines, leaping high with incredible athletic agility as desperation guided his strikes. This wooden monstrosity seemed completely endless. Endless, heavy, knotty roots and thorny vines kept regenerating from the earth, turning the room into total chaos and threatening to crush him. Fortunately, those mysterious red shoes, a powerful ancient artifact, suddenly began to glow, granting him miraculous speed and agility, allowing him to dodge the strikes and counterattack with lethal precision. Honestly, this was a total lifesaver. Yuan knew he had to keep moving, as even a split-second delay would mean certain death against those relentlessly whipping, sharp wooden limbs. Caution was key. He proceeded carefully, tracking every single dark shadow, with hyperfocus, refusing to let exhaustion or panic cloud his judgment. Peering through the tangled, thorny thicket of the massive main trunk, Yuan finally spotted his true target, sending a wave of mixed dread and focus through his soul. His ultimate, shadowy adversary still lurked in the dark, a foe far more terrifying than anything he had ever faced, demanding his absolute, undivided concentration. Tightening his grip on the divine dagger, his resolve hardened further. The blade hummed with energy as he prepared for the final clash. He was driven by a fierce desire to survive this deadly struggle. With sharp composure, he leaped high into the air, feeling his body surge with raw strength. He was ready. He slipped carefully through the thick undergrowth, navigating the tightly woven vines. Sharp thorns scraped against his skin as his tense muscles braced. The monstrous beast could clearly sense that its end was drawing close. Deep inside its dark soul, fear began to take hold. Its heart hammered wildly, terror spread through every single cell. Yuansi fought desperately, pouring every ounce of his remaining strength into the fight. Adrenaline and fear surged through his veins. He had to move. Operating purely on instinct, he darted forward with blinding speed. He gritted his teeth, pushing his body past its limits. His chest heaved, his heart pounded. The moment was here. The divine dagger sunk deep into the massive trunk, splitting the ancient wood. Pure magical energy rippled outward, making the air feel suffocatingly tense. Suddenly, violent flames erupted, engulfing the entire area in a scorching blaze. The beast let out an agonizing shriek as the heat consumed it. It thrashed wildly in sheer despair, its massive body trembling from pain. Chaos erupted as the forest crackled with overflowing magical energy. Deafening explosions shattered the air, threatening to tear everything apart. Yet Yuansi refused to stop. He pushed through the chaos. He moved with cold precision, fear completely transforming into absolute confidence. Yuansi didn't hesitate for a single second. Look at that focus. He is ready to end this nightmare. Step by step, he neared the core. Time was running out. In a fraction of a second, he drove his dagger forward. The blade pierced deep into the tree's core, striking the dark source. It shattered the swirling corruption, splitting the massive, living trunk wide open. Blinding light and violent chaos merged around him, creating a terrifying storm. Every crash and movement felt 10 times louder in the blinding fog. Then the beast unleashed one final, ear-splitting shriek of pure agony. This sound was incredibly violent. It felt as if his eardrums would burst. A heavy air trembled with horror. Yuansi could barely stand the pressure. He shielded his face, grimacing in pain as the shockwave hit him. Every cell in his body screamed in warning from the pressure. Just like that, the monstrous creature dissolved into thin air. Its final breath faded, leaving behind nothing but a cold, empty silence. A sudden stillness fell over the battlefield, holding only the faint echo of terror. Yuansi stood in silence, scanning the devastated ruins of their brutal clash. A wave of exhaustion, relief, and lingering dread washed over him. After weighing the massive risks, he chose to deactivate his red shoes. He felt a quick flash of relief, mixed with sudden, anxious doubt. What would happen now that their magical boost was gone? The relic vanished from his feet, leaving a strange, hollow emptiness. It felt as though a vital chunk of his own strength had vanished. Our hero realized he had barely made it before their precious time ran out. A tense mix of joy and anxiety took over. Every second mattered. His gaze immediately drifted to the absolute devastation surrounding him. Shattered trees, torn earth, and drifting smoke painted a truly chaotic scene. It was total chaos, yet somehow strangely beautiful in its ruin. The night traveler could hardly believe that everything had ended in this way. He felt completely numb, braced for a trial that never came. A forever war gone, suddenly a panel appeared. The glowing screen floating before him announced the successful completion of his trial. Instantly, his detailed character map unlocked, revealing vital new pathways. It laid out his current abilities and unlocked crucial resources. His experience progress instantly surged by an impressive 20%. The hard-earned reward proved his massive growth after that brutal clash. He also secured a formidable and rare new item, Pest of Demon Conquest. The legendary red shoes were next, massively boosting his attributes and movement speed. He had all the info. A special window flashed in front of him. It confirmed the tired warrior would finally leave the spirit world in 5 minutes. He would leave this ruined, desolate battlefield far behind him. He read it instantly. An overwhelming wave of exhaustion hit him. His battered muscles locked up, his mind drifting toward a total collapse. Even standing was a chore. He had absolutely zero strength left in him. But realizing he was actually going back home safe and sound changed everything for him. Pure relief washed over him, making him leap high into the air. This massive hurdle, unbeaten for decades, finally cleared, and it was glorious. It was absolute proof of the young hero's incredible grit. Slumping back down, our weary traveler rested his body on the cold floor. He quietly watched warm sunlight stream through a narrow window. Suddenly, the mysterious glowing mark on his forehead flared to life. A brilliant, mystical light pulsed and danced across his face. It cast vibrant reflections in his eyes, turning the quiet room eerie. Young Yuansi knew right away that teleportation was starting. A thrilling shiver ran down his spine as he braced himself for the unknown. Where would this magic spit him out? Honestly, the anticipation is killing us. His physical form slowly began to dissolve into shimmering particles. The glowing dust scattered into the air, fading away bit by bit. Just before he vanished completely, his eyes flashed deep purple. The sharp glare pierced the gloom, radiating his newfound power. Pure, unbridled energy seeped out with every single breath. He stared straight ahead, his mind completely focused and at peace. The lingering dread was gone, replaced by absolute clarity. No fear remained. The young hero calmly accepted his hard victory. He gave a long, satisfied stretch, feeling light. The heavy burdens of his past had finally slipped away. He was ready to face whatever came next with quiet confidence. But looking down, he spotted his own unconscious body still on the floor. It left him utterly confused. His mind couldn't comprehend how to be here. And there at once, the contrast felt so strange. At first, the young man thought he was dead, floating in midair with a feeling of absolute weightlessness. There was no ground beneath his feet, and his heart was beating faster from a mix of shock and fear. But then he was suddenly thrown backward in a split second, the air compressing around him as he felt the violent rush of motion. It was pure excitement mixed with anxiety. All at once, then the boy snapped back into his body, feeling incredibly light, yet grounded in the warm reality around him. Meanwhile, his heart was still racing as his mind tried to make sense of the miracle he just witnessed. Feeling like a walking corpse, sudden goosebumps broke out all over his skin, leaving a cold and strange tingling sensation behind that forced his muscles to tense, completely breaking his breathing rhythm. Yoni immediately decided to check his character screen. Carefully studying every single stat, skill, and weakness, it turned out he could turn invisible for a short time using night patrol mode, which completely hid his presence, his scent, and even his breathing. All hidden, the window also showed he was currently at level 1, but he had fully unlocked his class. This granted him all starting skills and abilities, letting him unleash his full potential. Even better, the active time for his special shoes increased, allowing him to fully master the artifact blending its raw power seamlessly with his own energy. His body felt incredibly light, as if his weight had completely vanished, and his injuries healed instantly, leaving perfect skin with no pain or scars. Left behind, suddenly the boy's attention locked onto a tiny detail he missed. Before every other distraction faded away, leaving him laser-focused on this one thing, as if it had become the center of his mind. In front of him stood the exact same coffin he was ordered to open, its dark wood shining faintly in the gloom, and the boy's heart began racing in anticipation of danger. Surprisingly, his mission progress hit 100%, and it proved that the massive tree was indeed the temple guardian. Then the thought struck him that the coffin might actually be empty, bringing relief and intense curiosity. He still had a bit of time left, and his wonder completely crushed any remaining fear, pushing him to move forward both carefully and decisively. He had to uncover the coffin's secret and see what lay hidden inside. Just in case, he pulled the red shoes from his inventory, holding them tightly, prepared for whatever might happen next. After all, this powerful artifact granted him unbelievable speed and agility. Right before stepping toward the stone container, he slipped the shoes on, feeling their boundless lightness and magical energy surge through him, boosting his confidence. In preparation, Yuansi immediately felt much calmer with them on, realizing how the ancient artifact quieted his mind and body, guiding his steps with unshakable precision. Any lingering fear and anxiety melted away under this sense of perfect control, slashing through the thick vines blocking his path. The hero held his breath, feeling the suffocating tension, and a sudden fear gripped him. What lay ahead, the silence rising around him, grew deeper. He slowly approached the stone coffin, stepping cautiously. He listened closely, feeling every single breath of tension. Tension peaked. In that exact moment, he grabbed the heavy stone lid and heaved it up. He felt the icy weight of the stone and the freezing metal fittings. His chest tightened painfully as the deep secret hidden inside slowly unfolded. At first, nothing was visible. He had to step even closer. Holding his breath, he peered deep into the pitch-black coffin, searching desperately for any tiny detail that might reveal its secrets. Then he froze. There was actually a stunningly beautiful woman lying inside. Her face was peaceful, glowing with a soft and gentle light. Her elegant features and perfect posture made her look as if she were simply sleeping, not dead. Could this be the temple goddess herself? His heart raced at the mere thought of such a legendary figure. Her flawless skin looked like pure porcelain, and her hair fell in perfect shimmering waves that reflected the soft light. Absolutely stunning. She seemed to radiate an aura of absolute, unmatched perfection. The boy stood frozen, completely unsure of what to do next, just staring in total awe and hesitation at her tranquil face. He felt a wild, complex mix of amazement, reverence, and fear. The tree spirit's words about her being the mountain mistress echoed loudly in his head, deeply intensifying the sheer mystery of this moment. His young mind struggled to truly grasp her immense power and status. Yuansi thought the creature was telling the absolute truth. After all, the mighty mistress of the mountain lay right before him. The sudden realization left him deeply fascinated and quite terrified. But then he paused. His hard trial was technically completely finished by now. Perhaps his logical reasoning was correct, and this sleeping woman was just an old test set up for disciple training. Soon, deep regret hit him. Why did he let foolish curiosity guide him here? He felt a heavy wave of guilt and sharp anxiety. He had clearly broken the rules and placed his life in serious danger. Trembling with fear, he bent down as massive dread washed over him. This dark chamber could easily become his final resting place. Real panic tightened his chest, making his heart hammer and his body freeze up. This goddess in the coffin meant this trial held a far deeper, ancient history. Suddenly, Yuansi wanted absolutely nothing to do with any of this. He wanted to just slam the heavy lid shut and walk away, pretending he had never seen her, hoping to bury his rising anxiety. He wished he could erase this exact moment entirely from his memory. But then a strange detail inside the woman's mouth caught his eye. A tiny mysterious object was resting there, sparking a fresh wave of curiosity. The young cultivator had absolutely no idea what it could possibly be. His mind raced frantically, trying to find some kind of explanation. Endless theories swirled as he stood there, completely paralyzed by indecision. Oni battled a deep, silent inner struggle. Every choice felt dangerous yet completely inevitable. Cold sweat rolled right down his face, slowly sliding along his skin and betraying his hidden terror, standing frozen as he realized the sheer gravity of this lethal situation. One mistake meant death, yet the young traveler resolved to touch the cheek of the mountain goddess, slowly, reaching out with a trembling hand, feeling raw fear and curiosity, tangled deep inside while the goddess lay completely, eerily motionless. She showed absolutely no reaction, her face remaining completely stone-cold quiet. This brought the young man a strange relief and growing excitement. Suddenly, the mysterious artifact began to glow with a magical light, bathing the goddess and the surrounding cavern in a brilliant glow, radiating an incredible, mysterious energy that filled the heavy air. Then, the system screen announced this was a pure spiritual essence crystal, packed with enormous spiritual energy. This was exactly what Oni wanted. But get this, the mountain goddess had already completely purified it, cleansing away all the impurities to leave it beautifully pristine. The young traveler felt the warm energy flowing directly into his body, instantly awakening his strength and excitement. Now he could absorb it, without any fear, feeling totally safe in its incredible action. Because the purified energy was perfectly stable, there was zero risk. With highly careful movements, the boy slowly reached inside her mouth, pinching the light, buzzing object with 2 fingers while tensing up. At that moment, a system notification flashed. His overall experience reached 22%, sending an amazing wave of satisfaction directly through him. He felt a rush of new knowledge and strength filling his veins. Even without the status screen, he knew he had grown stronger. He felt his confidence, endurance, and agility shoot up. Oni realized he could probably take on a whole crowd now. This profound, immense power filled his muscles, making him extremely decisive. Clearing his throat awkwardly over her body, he felt slightly tense, yet tried to remain deeply respectful of the sleeping goddess. He wanted to keep the solemn, sacred atmosphere completely intact. Afterwards, he promised to burn 2 kilograms of ritual yellow paper in her honor every holiday, feeling sincere devotion and respect. With quiet confidence, he gently closed the heavy lid of the coffin, feeling a deep sense of balance and absolute peace settle over him. The quiet cavern air felt still, but then a red warning screen announced that a sudden countdown had begun. His heart hammered wildly as every passing second ticked closer to the end of this event. He was moving into the next major stage. It seemed nothing could stop him from returning home, especially since he now possessed such massive, overwhelming power and confidence. The surrounding world seemed completely subject to his quiet determination. But just as he turned, an unknown noise echoed nearby. That sudden sound abruptly shattered the quiet night, sending his heart racing and forcing his mind to go completely numb. He tensed up instantly. This sudden noise could easily signal an approaching, deadly threat. He spun around, desperately scanning the pitch-black space for any sudden movement. Straining his ears, he peered deep into the oppressive shadows, trying to pinpoint the source. But watch closely. A pale, ghostly hand is already creeping out directly behind his back. It slid out from the coffin, reaching toward him with a cold, ghostly grip. Its pale hand was barely visible in the dark, signaling a terrifying threat he hadn't noticed. Before he could react, the legendary mistress of the mountains sat straight up. Her rise was incredibly smooth and majestic, completely unfazed by her eerie resting place. Her eyes held a mysterious power, instantly flooding the entire room with pressure. Yuansi's eyes widened. He stared in shock as his body tensed from panic. His heart hammered wildly in his chest, trapped between absolute dread and a strange sense of awe. She remained completely silent, her calm, unreadable stare locked directly on him. That cold, unchanging expression made the terrified Yuansi tremble with profound respect and mounting fear. She carefully scanned the dark room, observing every detail. It felt as if she could perceive everything, projecting an ancient authority. Rooted to the spot, the boy was completely unable to look away. He froze completely. His heart skipped a beat as he stared directly at the majestic goddess. His mind simply could not grasp the divine presence of the powerful entity. Cold sweat poured down his face, his lips shaking violently under her crushing, divine presence. His pulse hammered with pure panic, completely overwhelmed by this impossible situation. The goddess silently tracked his every move, reading his raw fear effortlessly. She easily perceived every single flicker of his raw terror, completely dominating the silent room. Her gaze radiated an ancient power, making any thought of escape feel impossible. Then her cold lips curled into a faint smile, briefly adding a sudden touch of humanity. That single spark of life softened her cold expression, catching him completely off guard. He screamed. The sight of a smiling corpse completely broke his sanity. His heart pounded wildly. He stared in absolute horror at the impossible phenomenon unfolding before him. Pure panic gripped his soul as his brain struggled to process this nightmare. Suddenly, the system interface flashed red, warning him that he had only 4 seconds left on the clock. Time slowed to an absolute crawl. Each passing millisecond felt like an eternity. His mind raced to predict her next move, bracing for the inevitable outcome. But instead of attacking, the powerful mistress of the mountain calmly declared that she would find him soon. Her voice was soft but absolute, sealing his fate with a terrifying power. As his final countdown hit 0, an invisible, violent force suddenly locked onto the young man. It ripped him straight out of that nightmare, dragging him mercilessly back to reality. He crashed hard onto a solid floor, completely unsure of what lay ahead. He sat up quickly. He was completely shocked by this sudden, jarring return to normal life. Too many terrifying questions remained unanswered, and the mystery weighed heavily on him. He simply hadn't found any answers, leaving his thoughts in complete disarray. In that exact moment, the startled hero realized he was sitting in a completely unfamiliar room. The dead silence around him only made the bizarre experience feel even more unreal. But slowly, the warm morning sunlight streaming through the window began to gently calm his tensed nerves. Soft golden beams washed over the walls, gradually pushing back his lingering dread. A gentle breeze stirred the quiet air, slowly restoring a comforting sense of home. Gently, a soft breeze slipped quietly through the curtains, seeping inside. The curtains swayed slowly, creating a soothing rhythm in the sunlit room. Finally, Yuansi dragged himself out of bed, trying to clear his head. He needed to gather his scattered thoughts after that terrifying ordeal. First, he had to make sure this world was actually real, he knew. The mountain goddess had whispered something vital to him at the end. But the memory slipped away, only an uneasy feeling remained behind. It was a crucial warning. Frustratingly, those words simply refused to stay. Locked in his mind, leaving him deeply disappointed and full of regret, he had lost his only chance to decode her mystery. Then his eyes widened. Yuansi was still wearing those red shoes. From that strange, dangerous world, the physical proof made his chest tighten in panic. He quickly ordered them to deactivate right away, scrambling to hide the shoes so absolutely nobody would notice them. Discovery would be disastrous. Yuansi knew getting caught meant instant trouble. And endless, messy misunderstandings with everyone around him today. But whatever she said, the spirit world was behind him now. A brand new reality was opening up, filled with fresh challenges and massive opportunities. Suddenly, his aunt called out from her bed, asking with a hint of worry in her voice why he always locks his bedroom door. She was just curious. Hearing her voice, the young man instantly rushed over and hugged her tight, admitting he was too sad. All his bottled emotions finally burst out in that warm, long-awaited embrace. That morning, everything around him felt unusually beautiful and incredibly fresh, as if the whole world had suddenly taken on vibrant, new colors of deep peace. Meanwhile, back at the office, Dong was eagerly asking if anyone had heard any fresh news about the kid, desperate to know every detail. Guana had already tried calling him 6 times, but every single attempt failed. His phone was dead, fueling her growing panic. They were all incredibly stressed, having absolutely no idea what to expect next. Every passing minute felt like a stressful eternity. With the outcome still completely unknown, literally anything could actually happen. This looming uncertainty filled the room with tension. Guana brought up the classic theory of Schrödinger's cat, explaining that until someone opens the box, it is impossible to know if the cat is actually alive. That uncertainty matched their situation perfectly. Surviving inside the Yulan tunnel was basically zero. Any remaining hope felt incredibly fragile and completely false. The group quickly told Wei Tai to shut up because his dark comments were totally killing the vibe and ruining everyone's morale. He was clueless. The poor guy had no idea what he said wrong, his confusion mounting as he realized his words had caused such an unexpected backlash. The nearby scouts just facepalmed in sheer frustration. They had absolutely no way to fix this mess. Meanwhile, Guana could not stop thinking about her missing colleague. She realized she truly wanted to work with him, to finally feel that team support. No hope left, she doubted he would ever return. It felt pretty much impossible now, leaving a bitter ache of loss in her chest. She had to accept reality. If they could not reach him by evening, all hope would be gone. A heavy, anxious weight settled over the entire room. Everyone waiting for him felt the despair creeping in. Then Dongzi stepped forward. He ordered immediate updates the absolute second any news came in. He needed to stay in control, demanding a lightning-fast response. His assistant nodded, waiting quietly for whatever might happen next. She tried to stay calm and braced for the worst. Meanwhile, the manager prepared to leave. He walked out, leaving the two of them alone in the quiet, tense office. The heavy silence pressed down on them, then, right out of nowhere, her phone suddenly went off, and honestly, both of them practically jumped. Hearts pounded, the sheer surprise of it hit them hard. Startled, she leaped up and quickly turned off the loudspeaker. She stared at the screen. It was Yuansi calling, her chest flooded with pure shock. Joy flooded her, but Guana just sat there, completely frozen with panic. Her head spun, heart drumming wildly against her ribs in total confusion. Dongzi immediately ordered her to put the call on speakerphone right now. He wanted everyone to hear. The room grew incredibly quiet and tense. Everyone leaned in, hanging on every single word. Slowly, the scout answered. She forced out a polite greeting, trying desperately to mask her trembling voice. She did her best to keep the tone friendly and casual. Even now, she could barely believe this was the guy they had all been waiting for. Her chest practically vibrated with a wild mix of shock and pure happiness. On the other end, Yuansi greeted his sister with a warm, relieved smile. Hearing her voice brought him an incredible wave of comfort. He proudly announced he had survived that brutal, terrifying ordeal. He was back from the spiritual world, his voice practically radiating relief. Pure shock, the entire office instantly froze at his words. They could not mask their absolute disbelief at what he had achieved. Dongzi cheered wildly. I mean, this was a complete and total miracle. His face lit up with an incredibly bright glow of pure excitement. Stay calm, he quickly ordered them to pull it together. They had to remain calm, even in the middle of this massive victory. Yulan Tunnel, deemed completely impossible to survive, was now fully cleared. This was going to cause a massive uproar, and Yuansi's name would explode. Instantly famous, his very first mission would make him legendary. See, there were only a few trials left for night travelers in all of Shanghai. Because they were so rare, every single trial was insanely dangerous. That specific tunnel had already wiped out countless elite travelers in the past. Those heavy losses had severely damaged the organization's reputation and power. But with this victory, the influx of eager new recruits would skyrocket. Competition would grow fierce, bringing a whole new set of high stakes. Moving forward, the organization's rewards might not be quite as easy to claim. Just like the first sweep, to the officials, simply seeing more travelers active was huge. It was concrete proof of their growing influence, which mattered most. Guana asked him how on earth he passed such an incredibly brutal test. Her voice was thick with shock, completely unable to hide her curiosity. Yuansi shrugged it off, claiming there was really nothing to it. In fact, anyone with 2 working legs could have easily cleared it. Hearing this, Dongzi urgently requested him to report to headquarters immediately. They needed him there in person to map out their future. Dongzi knew this kid possessed abilities that put him leagues above normal people. Yet the exact nature of his power remained a complete mystery. Meanwhile, Wang Tai figured their leader had just recruited some absolute combat monster. A wild card capable of turning the tides for their organization. Someone who could easily crush any rival in their path. He fully realized this traveler was a once-in-a-generation genius. A master whose talent could shift any battlefield in their favor. While he wanted to add all these glowing details to his report, he hesitated, unsure of the best way to explain it without sounding ridiculous. Ultimately, he decided to deliver the massive news to Mr. Fu directly. No fluff, no exaggerations, just the straight facts of it. When word finally arrived that the brutal trial was successfully cleared, a massive wave of relief washed over everyone who was waiting. Wasting no time, Dongzi drafted an email straight to Mr. Fu. He laid out every single detail, highlighting just how critical this was. Back in his quiet office, Dongzi waited anxiously for a response. He kept staring at the clock, feeling the mounting pressure of anticipation. But the suspense did not last long before his phone suddenly rang. The sharp ringtone shattered the silence, instantly grabbing his full attention. Grinning, the eager scout quickly picked up the receiver. He was completely ready to hear what the big boss had to say. Commander Fu immediately demanded to know if this incredible report was actually true. A breakthrough like this could completely rewrite all their future strategies. Honestly, you can't blame Dongzi. He was still reeling from the shock himself. He had only hung up with Yuansi a few short minutes ago. Wrapping his head around this mind-blowing development was going to take time. Every move from here on out required absolute, flawless planning. To be fair, Mr. Fu had absolutely zero expectations for Yuanzi initially. He never imagined the rookie could survive such a ridiculously brutal trial. But clearing the notorious Ulen tunnel proved he was on another level. Seriously, even among elite night travelers, this guy was a certified beast. This made him an incredibly priceless asset to their cause. Mr. Fu decided to report to the council and ensure Dongzi was generously rewarded. He deserved every penny for handling this situation so perfectly. Hearing he was getting a bonus, Dongzi immediately started grinning from ear to ear. His face beamed with pride, yet a shadow of doubt still lingered. Should he keep this incredible news a secret or share it with the world? Information was already leaking. Too many officers knew about the targets. The White Tiger Corps was hunting the Wanderer. Keeping this quiet was impossible. Centurion Fu warned them to stay sharp. The faction was shifting. Dangerous undercurrents were moving deep within the Five Elements alliance. They had to avoid another disaster, like the Sobs of the 100 Flowers incident. Outplaying their rivals would take caution. Dongs asked for guidance. He needed clear instructions on how they should handle things. Fu had a surprisingly simple answer: throw more cash at them. Raw funding was the easiest way to guarantee their targets' cooperation. Dongs stared. He did not get the logic of this tactic at all. He pressed for details, determined to avoid any kind of sloppy mistake. Fu admitted he generally disliked buying people off with money. Yet direct financial incentives always yielded the most permanent results. Moving on, Yuansi had to draft his mission report immediately. Getting raw, reliable intel on the anomaly was absolutely crucial. They had to uncover every deep secret of the Yulan temple. Dongs understood the massive stakes and agreed to the plan. He would carry out the directive without another single second of hesitation. Centurion Fu was not called the Money Prince for nothing. He stood as one of the 4 elite, legendary leaders. His brilliant, calculated schemes pulled in massive earnings every time. Now he logged into his terminal, digging through classified folders. He had to find a specific file. Suddenly, things changed. A glowing spiritual world alert flashed on his monitor. That bright, pulsating neon glow immediately grabbed the attention of everyone present. In the chat, walkers actively questioned Dongs about his mysterious new recruit. Everyone wanted to know how he managed to snare such talent. Then a walker reported a tragic disappearance from his local area. Another victim had vanished without a single trace inside the shelling tunnel. They still had not found him, spreading pure dread among the locals. Dong stared at the screen, deeply unsettled by the unfolding events. These fast-moving, complex events were completely altering his plans. He silently urged them not to jump to conclusions just yet. The groundwork was set, and everything was thoroughly prepared. Only a few administrative details remained to wrap up the operation. Dongs decided to post an update to clear the air. He wanted to kill the rumors before they spiraled out of control. Confusion and anxiety still hung heavily over the group chat. Absolutely nobody could make any sense of last night's terrifying events. Dongs dropped a message that made everyone freeze in shock. His rookie recruit had actually survived the brutal Yulan temple. He confirmed that the rookie had completely cleared the impossible trial. The rookie night traveler had walked out of there alive. It was a mind-blowing display of talent and raw grit. Back in his quiet office, Centurion Fu sat back, totally unfazed. He smiled quietly, savoring the sweet taste of his own victory and inner satisfaction. Fuinang declared that from this day forward, the mission belonged entirely to them. He promised to upload a highly detailed and precise report to the database soon. This would ensure absolute process control. The entire office fell dead silent, processing this massive turn of events. But that silence quickly broke, and they eagerly decided to celebrate. They threw a quick celebration. Meanwhile, news quickly reached the rival Thai sect. They discussed the situation tensely, desperately trying to understand the consequences. Their plans were ruined. They could not understand how the newcomer succeeded. It is honestly mind-blowing. Worse yet, they had no idea who he was. How did they overlook such a talented traveler? It filled them with anxiety. Their elder had made a major mistake, and it was incredibly costly. The Thai sect had lost a valuable traveler, a massive blow. This failure sparked a heavy wave of irritation among them. Back at the office, absolute silence reigned, save for a faint sound. The soft clicking of keys and muffled footsteps barely disturbed the calm. Soon the young man arrived outside the door and knocked without delay. He stood ready to enter when the heavy door finally swung open. Yuansi smiled warmly and announced his return, greeting everyone in the room. He politely invited them to talk about recent events. Guana, however, had initially pinned him as a harmless, innocent puppy. How wrong she was. Underneath that soft exterior, a cunning wolf with terrifying power lay in wait. He could easily surprise the most seasoned veterans. She congratulated him warmly. He was finally a night traveler, and she softly invited him into her arms. She openly showed her immense admiration for his feat, but the youth kept his distance, politely saying that her embrace was a far too valuable reward. He suggested holding onto that offer until a much better time. To properly appreciate it, Yuanzi saw right through her seductive tactics. But his mind remained sharp, cool, and totally unaffected by her temptations. He maintained complete, unwavering control over himself and the situation. Smoothly changing the subject, the scout suggested seeing the leader immediately, as he was eagerly waiting to discuss some highly critical matters. Guano advised him that he did not need to reveal anything about his inventory. Keeping his secret methods hidden was absolutely vital. For their safety, honestly, you cannot blame him for staying guarded. It was incredibly clear that he had zero intention of sharing his secrets with anyone. Keeping his cards hidden was crucial for survival and power. In tight situations, meanwhile, Dong was already waiting in his private office, sitting calmly behind his desk and keeping his eyes glued to the door, ready to start their crucial meeting immediately. The young man greeted him respectfully, bowing his head slightly with a calm smile. Showing his absolute readiness, Dong quickly decided to share his biggest underlying anxiety, opening up about the fears that plagued him moments ago, hoping to break the heavy tension and find mutual understanding. Right on the way to his office, an unpredictable danger that could ruin everything. Just like during their very first meeting, the young traveler asked for a cola again. It was a small habit, showing his nostalgic side for their early days. Man immediately ordered Guan to send someone out to get the newcomer's drink. He wanted to make absolutely sure his guest's request was handled perfectly. The girl joked that his status was rising right before her eyes. Her lighthearted teasing instantly brightened the mood, putting a smile on everyone's face. Dongi stepped in, reminding the traveler to write a detailed report. The higher-ups needed to know everything about his journey through the tunnel. Every obstacle had to be documented to fully understand the dangers. He wanted to know one thing. Did he learn anything new about that mysterious temple? These answers would help their research. Just then, Wang Tai joined in. He chimed in with polite questions, shifting the tone of the room. Suddenly, the conversation felt a whole lot more serious. Wang Tai was there to help the newcomer draft that official report. They needed to double-check every single detail for absolute accuracy. Once everything was verified, the traveler began wrapping up his story. He carefully walked them through the final moments of his wild experience. He left out nothing major, finally letting out a sigh of relief. But he intentionally kept quiet about the red tulips, his exclusive reward. Keeping this secret meant preserving its true power and value. Besides, he knew that Pest's demon subjugation was a legendary achievement. A high-level feat like that would massively boost his rank and status. It would unlock incredible new paths to grow his abilities. You might think the spiritual world is just a game, but it's not. The stakes were real, and these rare artifacts held unimaginable power. Each one was priceless. Looking ahead, things would change. Since he successfully destroyed the tree boss and claimed its unique artifact, that entire stage will disappear, making the tunnel much easier. This will simplify things for future travelers, but rules are rules. Taking an item from that world instantly changes its overall weight. And if you die inside, leaving your body behind for monsters, the weight increases massively, making the trial much harder for others. It raises the danger level. The guidebook only covers the basics. Real survival requires adapting to whatever happens in the moment. You must weigh every risk and act carefully. Wang Tai concluded that if those shoes remained in that world, their weight wouldn't drop, making things harder for future challengers. Yuansi knew her colleague had hit the nail on the head. Wang Tai had perfectly captured the absolute core of the issue. His words completely aligned with the brutal reality they faced. But something still felt incredibly off. The details he shared didn't match the expected difficulty. An S-class level should have been much, much worse. They couldn't help but suspect he was hiding the truth. But he kept some details to himself, making them doubt his whole story. They doubted his info, yet the young man kept talking, explaining that in addition to the demon, there was a mysterious stone coffin resting in the dark. It felt incredibly ominous and threatened their very lives. The leader immediately demanded to know what lay inside. He wanted every single detail to figure out the danger they faced. Yuansi answered cautiously, revealing that the stone coffin held a body. It belonged to the legendary mistress of the mountain herself. And the moment he lifted the lid, her eyes snapped open. And let's be real, the leader completely lost his mind right here. Pure panic turned into a wave of deep frustration. Yuansi grew highly anxious, completely thrown off by the leader's intense anger. He never expected his discovery to cause such a massive freakout. Wang Tai realized two major paths lay ahead after this awakening. If this ancient goddess truly woke up, it would completely reshape their future. First, the temple would stop being a simple trial and become a high-level instance. This shift would make the zone infinitely more complex and dangerous. Alternatively, the old temple might actually lower its current difficulty level, while spawning an entirely new high-level zone somewhere else entirely. These shifts were crucial for Wang Tai. Guana chimed in, explaining that more details meant a much bigger payout for him. Good intel was highly valuable and set the exact reward amount. But Yuansi did not care about cash. He had bigger worries. He was terrified that the resurrected goddess would hunt him down next. Wang Tai told him to relax, pointing out that he was still a nobody. An entity that powerful would never pay attention to a weakling like him. His heavy anxiety was completely useless, and he needed to calm down. That harsh truth actually brought the young novice a bit of comfort. Realizing he was too weak to be noticed made him feel incredibly safe. No need to panic, but leave it to her to ask the real questions. She asked if the sleeping goddess was actually beautiful in person. She wanted to know what kind of impression the mistress left behind. Yuansi answered honestly, telling Guana that the goddess was far prettier than her. This direct answer completely caught Guana off guard, sparking a hint of jealousy. Wang Tai dryly added that as research material, the goddess was infinitely more valuable. Her divine powers and dark secrets held the keys to unlocking ancient mysteries. Guana laughed off the joke, but quickly warned them both to stay quiet. Talking like that could get them into massive trouble with the higher-ups. Seriously. Meanwhile, inside the elder's estate, a quiet serenity filled the entire building. It felt like time had stood still, far away from all the chaos. A subordinate rushed in with urgent news that just arrived from Sunhea. A night traveler working under Centurion Fu had successfully cleared the entire tunnel. The gray-haired elder froze, completely stunned by the shocking and sudden success. His mind raced as he struggled to process the unexpected reports. This shocking revelation completely freezes him. His face is pale, his jaw dropped in absolute disbelief. Regaining his composure, he quickly orders Sun He's main leader, Yuan Ting, to lock down this critical intel and guard it with his life, but secrets never stay buried for long around here. It is too late. Word of the wild incident is already spreading everywhere, through the ranks, leaving everyone deeply rattled and on edge, unable to shrug it off. The elder is left entirely stunned and anxious, totally unsure of his next move or how to handle this massive crisis that is rapidly spinning out of control. To make matters worse, his heart sinks because Centurion has already issued strict orders from above, leaving him under immense pressure. Tough decisions must be made right now, and there is no mistakes, zero room for error. Then things get even heavier. a breathless servant arrives with another massive report. He literally shakes with anxiety, knowing lives hang in the balance. He reveals that the legendary ancient day traveler has officially woken up. This terrifying news sends intense shockwaves of fear straight through everyone. The entire faction, a powerhouse like him, could easily rewrite their whole fate. Panic sets in. The High Inspector realizes they are out of time. He demands an emergency council to dissect this threat, weigh their options, and somehow map out a desperate plan to prevent total, absolute disaster. Meanwhile, Yuansi remains completely relaxed in his office, quietly analyzing the chaos. Around him, it is as if the impending storm cannot touch him at all. He takes his time scrolling through his phone. He spots an update on the night travelers. And a strange detail catches his eye. He is stunned to realize that their official class emblem is a crescent moon, adding another layer of mystery. His mind instantly flashes back. A glowing full moon had suddenly appeared. Burned itself onto his own forehead. He instantly resolves to hide this mark, keeping it completely to himself. Honestly, staying under the radar is his best play. This bizarre phenomenon is unheard of. He needs to figure out on his own. If this power is a blessing or a curse, there is absolutely zero mention of it in any database or historical record, with something this dangerously rare. Absolute secrecy is his only shield. He decides to lock down his lips, guarding his incredible secret from any prying eyes or suspicious rivals. Slowly he glances over at his sister. Time to ask her. He prepares to ask something big, hoping for an honest, real answer. While browsing the online forums earlier, he stumbled upon some highly incredible reports about the actual physical temple of the mountain goddess, if it exists. Maybe she is real too. The sheer thought of it leaves him deeply unsettled. She gently explains that spiritual worlds lie between reality and pure illusion. In the normal world, you can only find physical echoes of those divine places. Locations like the Lingan Reservoir or the famous Daeshui amusement park only mirror a tiny fraction of their true, highly mystical nature. He freezes. The terrifying goddess he met was actually just an illusion. Spiritual projection. The realization brings immediate relief, letting his tense muscles finally relax as the paralyzing fear fades away. Meanwhile, his sister remains skeptical. He feared that woman, which was pretty wild considering how much he praised her. All that talk of her charm made his terror look completely bizarre. Still, Yuansi remained completely calm as he urged the young lady to drop her petty spite. Grudges only complicate things and make life harder. It ruins relationships. Just then, the director approached. He walked with incredibly slow and highly confident steps. His serious expression clearly showed he was fully ready for an important conversation. He urgently ordered Guan Yu to follow him closely as they walked. A scout from the White Tiger Course had just been killed inside the hotel. This meant everyone there was in major danger. Without a single second of hesitation, she agreed to help. Ready for any major crisis, she stood right by him. Dong then advised Yoni to head over to the university right away.